Ah. We've done it. We've done it. Glory be and mercy me. We've done it yet again. Here we are. Yet another day of streaming. I got my pug on my lap. Can you see him? Can you see my pug? No, you can't see my pug on my lap. Unfortunate. Unfortunate. He's a beautiful little guy. Yes, he is. Quite proud of myself today. We're switching this over to live chat. So proud of myself today. I actually cleaned up my apartment. You know, it's one of the things I struggle with. I bet many of you are struggling with as well, right? That you kind of look at your dishes, you look at your floor that's gathering dust and all that kind of stuff, and you think, well, what's the point? What's the point, right? This whole thing's in free fall collapse anyway, all of that kind of stuff. But today, I actually did it. I did my laundry. I did my dishes. I vacuumed up the floor. I did some great meditation today. Compton's in first. Congratulations, Compton. You did it. You did it. You are the next contestant on The Price is Right. Got some meditation in, got some yoga in, even did a recording today. Feels good. Feels good, man. Feels good. Get back on. Get back into that grind set. Get back on the grind and start grinding away. Gotta fight and gotta work. Yes, I do. I hope that every single one of you is doing really lovely out there. I hope that everybody's doing really, really great. We are... I feel like I want to touch base again quickly with this story. This story to me is... I was talking about it yesterday, but it's worth bringing up again. I think the thing that is odd, not odd, but interesting about this particular story is that people are being very naive about this story. I've had several conversations about this particular story, and near as I can tell, we're looking pretty dumb as a people right now. First of all, the only article that ever reported that Clara Sorrenti, right, for those of you who are just listening, this is an article about how Clara Sorrenti was doxxed and now she's being forced to flee the country, right? The only article that ever reported that she was even a communist in the first place was the very, very first one that reported that she has run in the Communist Party. Right, she's been running in the Communist Party since I think 2016. And what are they doing? They're using the trans issue as a shield, right, to shift over away from class politics into identity politics, right? And they're also doing a really good job of not actually bringing up, hey, why are cops kicking in the doors of anybody based on the most frivolous of reasons? Literally, the story is that someone in the world sent an email to the police forces saying, my name's Clara Sorrenti, I have a gun. That's it. That's it. And that's enough for cops to go into the door, go kick in the door of a trans rights activist who is also a communist running in the Communist Party, and then dox her, right? Bad enough to actually do it and steal her equipment, no less, right? Making it so that she can't even do her job, but then dox her. And the conversations I'm having with the public on this one have to be described as childishly naive. Childishly naive. Like baby brain. Tiny little walnut brains. Literally pretending as though the police aren't doing this on purpose. People literally being like, well, the police wouldn't do that. Yes, they would. They absolutely would. Like, why are we pretending like they don't? That's their job. That's what they're supposed to do. Their role is to kick in the doors of communists and prevent them from gaining power. That's what they're supposed to do. And when we find out that the police themselves were responsible for generating this email, which is exactly what they've done, right? It isn't like some 4chaner out in the world who did this. And then the cops went, blah, 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 blah. The police themselves generated this email as a piece of evidence that they use in order to do this. And it's bad enough that they kicked in her door and stole her stuff, but to dox her, completely, like, forget about the fact that it's police harassing communists for a minute. Let's just pretend as though it's police doing a job, right? We received information and we went and did a thing. But what are you doxing people for? What, are you incompetent? I mean, obviously they're incompetent. They're police. But, like, obviously they've done this on purpose in order to do this. This is what they've done. It's extremely straightforward. And to pretend as though it's not the case requires a type of baby brain that I can't even begin to understand. Like, how do you get out of bed in the morning? How do you tie your shoes? Right? Like, how do you figure out where your keys are? How do you get out of your apartment? How do you find your way to work? How do you remember where you work? How do you remember to do the job that you do? Like, if this is the level of intelligence that you're at, where you're genuinely walking around in the world being like, police are trying to do their best, and they're not, like, actively, obviously harassing communists, obviously, as a state function, I just don't know how you operate in the world. Hey, Watson, how you doing, bud? Good to see you. Radio, good to see you, too. Grinning, good to see you. Yeah. Look, hello. I don't really understand your statement here, John Smith. Good to see you, too, by the way. Starting off with a lolcow? Is this something you kids are onto? Are the kids saying this stuff? I don't know what you mean by lolcow. I've just decided I'm going to lean right into being old. 100%. People are going to come into this channel, they're going to say all kinds of stuff. The Gen Z kids are going to come in here, they're going to say all kinds of stuff, and I'm just going to be like, whatever you say, bro. I have no idea what you're talking about. No idea what you're talking about. Please explain it. Libertarians love big government, but it has to be big government. Yeah. Lolcats? I don't know, dude. I don't know. So, I wanted to talk more about this, because I actually think, Anemone, how you doing? How you doing? I straight up think that this is probably one of the more important stories that's going around right now. I'm actually impressed that the CBC is reporting on it, but I'm not surprised that they're omitting the communist angle, which is absolutely what's happening. And I'm not surprised that they're just acting as a shield for the cops. They're simply not asking the question. Why did you dox this person? Is that standard operating procedure? Is it standard operating procedure to kick in the door of people's homes and then dox them? Is that standard operating procedure? If it is, we've got questions to ask, right? We got big questions to ask. A lolcow is a person you get extensive laughs from who doesn't know they are being made fun of. They can often think they are admired for what they are doing, but secretly they're being laughed at. So are you laughing at me, John? Am I just the butt of the joke? Am I the lolcow? Who's the lolcow in this situation for you, John? And are you laughing at Clara Sorrenti? Why? I've got questions. Finally, someone older than me. I'm a young 48. Almost 65. Good to know. Is a term by online bullies to identify consistent and reliable targets for bullying. John is laughing at clears. You should stop, dude. This is a very serious story. This is a very, 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 very serious story. Like, I find that to be a bit disturbing, frankly. Like, here is a person, a trans person, who is acting as an activist, who has run for office. What's the thing that we're all told to do? Go vote. Go vote. You wanna change things? You better go vote. Well, here's a person who's trying to play by those rules, trying to joined the Communist Party, trying to get involved, has understood that there is no representatives in the NDP, the Liberals or the Conservatives, that are representing them whatsoever. And so they're doing what they can within the rule set that they've been given, right? That this is apparently how the system is legitimized. That you can't pursue politics or any of this kind of stuff. I saw the Kiwi Farms thread where they deduced the hotel and Airbnb by the bed sheets and figured out she was using open source intelligence provided. Yeah. I mean, it's brutal. Like, it's brutal what they're doing. Right? And of course they've got the police on their side. Like, let's not absolutely let's not pretend like this is a trans activist and a communist that's gaining a lot of steam, right? She's got something like 40,000 followers on Twitch. She's actually gaining power. Like, the threat to the capitalist death cult is apparent. What happens if she gets a seat? What happens if she's in parliament? What happens if she's actually being interviewed by places like CBC? What happens? Oh, she's suddenly going to say things that communists say, right? This is the largest threat to the capitalist death cult that exists in Canada today. Look what they're willing to do. Look what they're willing to do. Like, to pretend otherwise, to pretend like this isn't a police state action in order to suppress a communist who is gaining power in her own right is desperately naive and childish. Desperately naive. And this idea that we're supposed to find that this is some kind of enjoyable thing. Now she's fleeing the country. She's getting death threats. Like, I consider this to be deadly serious. And one of the strongest signs that the system of governance that we live under has delegitimized itself. Delegitimized itself completely. That it's not even willing to play by its own rules. That it keeps telling us, just go vote. Well, if you build your own party. But you don't like what's going on in the country, right? Gather support. Well, here you go. Right? It's weird. It's weird that there are people doing this, that are trying to find out where she's going, that are trying to hunt her. That's the weirdest shit of life. That's weird. That's odd behavior. It's deranged, demented behavior. And the police are the ones that are responsible for kicking this off. The police are the ones that are responsible for creating this situation and these circumstances. Like, it's literally, here's a person who is just attempting to improve the society that she lives in. That's it. That's all it is. Right? It's like me. Like, what's my thing? Why is there no food and shelter? Why are people struggling for food and shelter? Why are we tolerating this? Why are we tolerating this? What kind of system can claim legitimacy with these sorts of outcomes? What kind of society can claim legitimacy with these kinds of outcomes? Heroism is missing. Don't know if I've ever seen you here before. Good to see you. Always good to see a new face. Milo, what are you doing, buddy? What are you doing? What are you doing, Milo? There's nothing here. There's nothing here. Milo, there's nothing here. If you want to go get a toy, you got to go get a toy. Okay, buddy? I know. I'm not 100% paying attention to you completely. I know. I'm paying attention to other people in the world, Milo. I know. How rude of me. I should be completely paying attention to you. I know. Hope you're here to participate, Heroism. I like Polyev, John. Have you been following him at all? Freedom from Trudeau and Singh would be great, but the NDP and Liberal partisans still think Singh is interesting and helping them, even though he's not. Polyev is just on the other side of it, dude. Like, the Liberals and the Conservatives are long-standing allies with one another, right? Very straightforwardly. And I'm not saying that glibly, okay? So I know you're new here, so that might be a shocking statement for you to hear. But it's one that I believe in completely. That liberals and conservatives are allies. That they have big disagreements in identity politics. They have big disagreements in this very narrow bandwidth of conversation that the media will hyper-focus on. But on issues of capital, i.e. who owns the means of production, who owns the society, who owns this place, on those issues, they are virulent allies, right? They work very, very much in tandem with one another. And the way that it works is that when liberals come in, they maintain the status quo. Maybe they give a little token to the populace to relieve a bit of pressure from the populace, to prevent them from understanding that the system has lost legitimacy and thereby overthrowing it. And then once the liberals begin to lose power because people recognize that they're fraudulent, because they are, they pivot to the right. And what does the right do? Well, the right takes away all of the things that the liberals put in place, privatize, do everything they can to empower the owners, right? But both of them, so in the end, like our politics, the politics of conservatives and liberalism is not much different than the politics of WWE wrestling, right? It's very, very similar. That the Incredible Hulk, the Hulk Hogan comes out, does his thing, does his whole thing, and the crowd screams and loses their mind. And then Andre the Giant comes out, the crowd boos, right? And everybody loses their mind. And then they have a thing, right? There's a scuffle, there's a fight, there's something that happens, and then the audience loses their mind about it and then has big, long discussions about the legitimacy of what occurred in front of their eyes. And then when the lights go out and the audience goes home, Andre the Giant and Hulk Hogan shake hands, say good show tonight, and Vince McMahon pays them both. That's politics in Canada. And so Pierre Poilievre, in this arrangement, so what that means is that all politics is vanity. There's no such thing as a politician who's actually interested in improving your life. Because the only thing these people are seeking is power for themselves. So that they can say, look at me, I'm the Prime Minister. So that they can say, look at me, I'm an MP. But in the end, they just do what their owners tell them to do, right? Poilievre's not different in this regard. The only thing that makes Poilievre interesting is that he actually might have the charisma and the ability to do it, unlike O'Toole and Scheer, who didn't understand one of the real basics of what Canadians like in their politicians, right? Canadians consistently vote for the most effective liar. And the problem with Scheer and O'Toole is that they were trying to pitch a dead system that doesn't work without lying about it. They were trying to just, shine the pig up, give it its best look, put lipstick on the pig, right? Pierre is completely willing to lie about it, right? And he's extremely good at it. And Pierre Poilievre's system, the structure of his lies, is extremely good. I've been saying this about him for years, right? Because I've seen this trajectory for him for a long time. That what he does is he acknowledges your grievance, right? That's step one. It's usually liberals that do this. Yeah, climate change. We care about climate change. Absolutely, we care about climate change. For sure. We're going to do something about it, right? So acknowledge your grievance, right? Say that we've got a plan for it, right? Even though the plan is stupid and pointless and doesn't work, like the carbon tax, right? It didn't achieve anything. It didn't do anything. It was just a token kind of throw at the thing, right? And then, so he takes you to that point, and then right at the end, right when he's got you reeled in and you're ready to go, he pivots it, and essentially what Pierre Poilievre believes in and what he's going to provide is more of this trickle-down neoliberal garbage, right? So the way that he governs is not going to be very much different from the way that the Trudeau liberals govern, in the end. And that is because, fundamentally, both of them are paid by the same people. They're both owned by the billionaire class. They're both owned by the oligarchy. And someone like Pierre Poilievre isn't going to attempt to upset that, right? Because he wants to be the prime minister. Because all politics is vanity in the Canadian system. That there's literally no such thing as anyone who's even getting into politics at this point saying, I'm doing it to improve this, I'm fighting for this, or any of that kind of stuff. No. It is 100% across the board, all, so that they can be like, well, look at me, I'm the MP of some, I'm a very important person, look at me, right? And I get access to these parties, and I get to go to brunch, and I get to do this, and I get to do that. And so the idea that we're all going to vote Poilievre and he's actually going to improve anything, he'll do stuff. Like, he'll fire the bank, like, he'll fire Tiff Macklem, right? He'll do all that kind of shit, right? There will be things that he does, but none of it will be structural. None of it will matter. And in the end, you'll cheer and you'll yell and you'll scream and you'll put your vote in and you'll do all that kind of stuff, and then you'll go to work on time. And you'll keep working for these owners that own you, right? Because that's the structure of the beast. And these guys aren't going to do anything to stop that. Isn't less tax on the working class kind of progressive, though? The other side of the coin to income assistance is taking less away from them. But this is kind of what I'm talking about. Like, so that essentially what you just said is like Pierre Poilievre is going to do basic liberalism, right? Throw a token in your direction, right? You're not going to own anything. You're not going to own the business you work at. It's not going to change anything. So put less tax on the working class. But so you'll get $200, $300, right? Like, that's just basic liberalism. But you'll still wake up and still go work the same shitty job in a society that's actively destroying itself, right? So I guess, like, throw the vote at Poilievre all you want to get the $200-$300, right? I think that we should think better of ourselves. We should be demanding more. We should be demanding a structural change to the system itself, right? Like, I'm genuinely not interested in a politician standing up and saying, hey, I think that I'll provide the absolute bare fucking minimum. Too bad. Like, too bad. I have higher standards. I don't think that this system of capital works. I think that it is a failure, an utter catastrophic failure. And if all we ever do as citizens is pretend that the system has legitimacy while picking between which guy is going to give us $100 every so often, like, our civilization is in a free fall collapse right now. We are exchanging the future of our children, the future of our society, the future of our civilization, for little pieces of paper. And numbers on screens. That's what we're doing. It's pretty fucking babyish what we're doing. That, like, we're just hoarding and piling it up in a corner underneath people like David Thompson, people like the Irvings, people like this, and instead of building things. Did you know that in China in the last decade they built 30,000 miles of high-speed rail? Did you know that they did that? Did you know that in China they're starting reactors that burn hotter than the sun? Did you know that? Like, there are countries on this planet right now that are actually building infrastructure and doing things while we are literally collapsing and having a conversation right now about whether or not we should vote for a guy based on whether or not he's going to give me a couple of $100. Like, we gotta have more self-esteem than this. We gotta hold people to a higher standard than this, because we're just failing, and it's not a little failure. Like, we're talking about a failure that has the potential to destabilize the human species and human civilization. This is what we're talking about here. That, like, For me, the stakes are here, and it seems like every single time I get involved in this, like, well, what about the conservatives conversation? The stakes are way down here. Well, at least I'll get a couple $100. Okay, then. Take your couple $100. Enjoy the apocalypse with it. Right? Go get a burger or something, I guess. I just not interested in participating. Like that, Pierre Poilievre is an interesting character in the unfolding political drama that has no legitimacy and isn't a political system. That like if you wanna have a nice WWE conversation about Pierre Poilievre, I do think he's an interesting character, and he'll be an interesting prime minister. Don't get me wrong. I think he'll be the prime minister of Canada. Like I think that he'll do it. If he doesn't do it, some serious stuff is going to happen in the Conservative Party. But I think he will, because the Liberals are not doing anything to shore up power and legitimize themselves. Right? The tax reduction for a couple $100, more potholes, rent goes up $105. Yep. Sounds like a good deal while worsening roads eats your car alive as well. And not to mention inflation. Right? Not to mention any of this kind of stuff. Right? So like it's literally just taking money from one hand and giving it to another hand. Right? So your wages will stay the same. You'll still go to work for the same people. They'll lower your taxes, but then inflation will eat it away. So it's just like a little shell game that they're doing. And meanwhile, you're just ignoring the fact that climate change is destroying this place and is going to continue to destroy this place. We're just ignoring the fact that the system of capital is a wealth extraction system that is impoverishing the majority of the population at this point. The majority of the population at this point. Like, lowering the tax rate a little bit is not going to get it done. Seriously. Like, we are at a point where we have to confront the system of capital. It's the only thing left to do. And until these politicians actually say that out loud, which they'll never do, then the system that we operate under has no legitimacy. It simply doesn't. It's just a little illusion that they put in front of you so the oligarchs can continue playing this failure game of self-destruction. That's what's happening. And in the meantime, while our civilization implodes and collapses in on itself, there are other places like China that are actually building a civilization, that are actually building something quite serious. Quite serious. And in 15 years, 10, 15 years, maybe even 5 years, we're going to look like absolute chumps compared to these guys. The exponential growth that they are experiencing because of their communist structure, because of the system of their governance, because they're actually building infrastructure, they're actually building and improving their society, right? And once America goes to war with them and loses, because America can't win a war to save their lives, what are we going to do? We're going to look like assholes. We're going to look like total assholes. We already look like assholes. We already have a system that's generating people who even our own allies are calling assholes. Like, we're not looking good, man. We're not looking good. And in my view, a lot of it comes down to people just are expecting way, way less. Like, way, way less than they should. Like, we don't have any self-esteem. We don't believe that government should actually do things and provide anything. We don't actually believe that we should have a good quality of life. And more I'm starting to wonder if are we actually suicidal? Are we actually suicidal? Like, are we legitimately just rolling our eyes and going like, just let's just get through it? And when the apocalypse comes and wipes us all out, are we actually going to go, good, it's over? Do we view the destruction of our own children as a net positive? Are we actually saying to one another, like, yeah, this place isn't any good? Is what we are doing essentially just a global abortion? Are we just saying, yeah, sure, there's a lot of potential here, but you know what, this place isn't that great. Let's just fucking destroy it and be done. Because that's what it looks like. That's what it looks like. When you take a step out of it and you stop thinking with your wallet for a second, right? And you start actually paying attention to what the earth is demanding and what creation itself is demanding, and you start paying attention to what life itself is demanding, and you realize that money is fake, we made it up and invented it. It's just a little grifting game for us to control one another with, right? You begin to see pretty clearly that we are literally burning this place down for a couple $100. Like, so I'm not going to participate. What do I think of Pierre Poilievre? I think he's got it in him to become the Prime Minister of Canada. He's an effective grifter. He lies really well. He understands that politics is entertainment, right? Some of the stuff that he's been releasing recently, very entertaining. Very entertaining. He understands the modern era of politics. He's taken a look at Donald Trump and he's learned the best lessons. So he has it in him to become the Prime Minister of Canada, and the place will continue burning down. Good evening, Seraphim. Good to see you. And heroism, I want to be really clear about one thing. I don't hate you for your position at all. I don't hate you for your position at all. Right? Believe me, I would absolutely love to be able to go to a ballot box and put a ballot in a box and be like, good, great. Now I've got a representative who's actually going to do something. Right? I would love that. I'd be over the moon about that. I would love to be sitting here talking about, like, politics as if it had any legitimacy. I would love to be sitting here being like, well, Pierre Poilievre says he's going to do this, and so, you know what, guys, I think that maybe we should actually consider, you know? But then Trudeau is countering with a counteroffer, right? I would love it if these guys were actually negotiating with one another about ideas about how to actually improve the society. I would be over the moon about that. If the conversation that was actually happening in the political space was about ideas and concepts and what world do we want to live in? How do we want to collectively decide to build the world? Where do we want to move forward? What do we want to do? But that's not what's happening. The system has no legitimacy. These people are all frauds. They work for the oligarchy exclusively. This is a show. It is theater. It is nothing else. It isn't politics. It's theater designed to look like politics. And Pierre Poilievre is just so happens to be one of the better improvisationalists. That's it. That's it. I wish it wasn't so, but it is. And I don't hold it against you. And if you go and you vote for Poilievre, great. Good for you. Right? You're going to get exactly what that ballot is worth, which is nothing. The tax rate on the 1% have dropped so much that dropping taxes for the working class simply speeds up privatization. Yeah. Yeah, dude, and like, at this stage in the game, like, it's not like they're not like paying for any infrastructure or anything, right? If you drop the tax rate for the working class, like, it's not like that money's going towards infrastructure or anything in the first place, right? So they're just doing it to get power for themselves, and then yeah, just as Watson says, they're just going to privatize, right? That's what they're running with, right? Like, that's what they're running with. 4 premiers call for more federal cash, discuss private sector delivery after healthcare summit. That's what they're talking about. Because that's what they're going to do. And are the NDP standing up and saying, this privatization effort is bad, we need to expand the public sector, we need to nationalize it? No. They're not talking that way at all. Because they're spineless, right? They work for the same people. Yeah, tax reduction for a couple $100, more potholes. Oh, I already read this one. It was such a good comment, Cotton. I thought I'd read it twice. Isaac, how you doing, Isaac? Good to see you, bud. The plan to scoop up all the properties from the poor by 2030 so the poor doesn't own anything, yeah? And such a good comment, you had to say it twice, Isaac. Yeah, he's just the conservative Trudeau. That's all he is, yeah. Pierre Polio Magic Show. If you can't exchange your labor or service directly with someone else's labor or services, you use money. The hard truth about the society that we live in, and it's a truth that's so hard that no one wants to believe it. No one wants to believe it. Is that the only time our system has ever generated positive gains for the populace is when we have surrounded the halls of power. That's literally the only time. There has never been another time when the system has generated positive gains. When the populace has arisen, when the communists and the socialists have arisen and have surrounded the halls of power and demanded better. That's what happened with FDR. That's what happened with Nixon, right? That the way we got healthcare in this country is that a popular movement, a guy that would be today be called a leftist populist, Tommy Douglas, threatened the power structure, right? And so the liberals passed it instead in order to maintain power for themselves. That treating these people like they are our friends and that they will respond rationally to these systems is not how it ever has worked, because our system is so fraudulent and such a failure in the first place that the only way it responds to the public is through mass direct action. There is no other way to do it. Simply put, that's the hard truth about our society. And the NDP has long given up on CCF radicalism, yeah. That even under Leighton, like I think that Leighton still had a little tiny piece of that, but Leighton was definitely the last gasp of it. And then it went to Mulcair, and Mulcair was a total just dud. And now you've got Jagmeet Singh, who literally works for the WEF, and so it's over. Like, it's over. The system of capital has co-opted the unions. It has integrated into the structure of capital the unions in order to placate and continue moving them. Which isn't to say, I had a thing here, we have a union drive happening. I mean, Republicans say they'll go after the labor movement if they take control of the House. So Republicans just being Republicans. I mean, top Canadian mining companies profited $143 billion in 2021, so it makes sense that we're paying more for their product, right? Makes sense that we have inflation while they make all the money, right? Yeah, it can't possibly be that they're just grifting us. Inflation's going to hit 18% in early 2023, says the UK. Like, these are signs of a collapsing society and a failing society, right? I think I might have closed that one. That's a shame. Hey, who's this handsome devil? Get rid of that. Get rid of that. Yeah, okay, we're just going to move on from that. Hero, if you're still listening in, bud, keep listening, keep participating, because, like, the only way forward for us as a people at this stage in the game is for us to gather collectively. And it's just starting, because I think people are just beginning to realize, just beginning to put together that the system no longer has legitimacy. That, oh great, who do you play? Who's your guy? The League of Legends dude. Every so often I think to myself, I'm going to get back into League of Legends, then I'm just like, no, I can't do it. I can't do it. I'm a Heroes of the Storm guy. I'll admit it. League of Legends is just like, it's too much. It's too much for me. Lilia, one of the new ones? Is Lilia one of the new ones? Anyway, Lilia. Don't need that rage. Yeah, for sure. For sure. Watson says, well, we are being made to pay for the near 15-year financial excesses of the ruling class through high interest rates and unemployment. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And, like, I look back on the millennial generation, and I like to think that the millennials, at least we were trying to push in the right direction, but we were too easily deceived. I think that that's the truth, is that we were not skeptical enough of the ruling class. If we were to critique the millennials, we were taken in by people like Obama, people like Justin Trudeau, who ran on essentially a hope and change ticket and then lied and betrayed us. Pretty straightforward. Yeah. We need a massive protest on housing here in Toronto. Absolutely. Absolutely. Sustained protest surrounding the halls of power. Like, these guys cannot get to work without walking through some kind of, like, picket line. Right? That's what we need to begin doing in big and serious ways, with the understanding that it's the only thing that matters. This is why Marxism is gaining proper prominence again. Absolutely. Because we're seeing through the grifters. That Justin Trudeau was always a grifter. That his whole I care about climate, like, it's a grift. He never gave a shit. He still doesn't. Right? He doesn't care at all. He's doing, like, little tokenism things. He's doing all this kind of stuff. Yeah, Justin ran on a look at my wavy hair, I'm a feminist platform. Well, and the liberals were smart. They actually acknowledged the truth about climate change, right? Which gained them a lot of credibility amongst the millennials. But it turns out that that was just part of the grift. That they never intended on doing anything about it. Yeah, what form of Marxism? Yeah, that's a good question. It's a good question. I mean, it's not going to be patriotic socialism, likely. Here they are letting homeowners set up ARUs that only need to have 7 square feet kitchen and 30 square foot bathroom for people to live in it. Yeah, they're going to sell us coffins, dude. If they can sell a coffin and charge $10,000 a day, they will. Like, that's if they can squeeze as much money as they possibly can, because it's a system of extraction. That's what it is. Yeah, Justin Trudeau played to the conservative suburbanite wine mom demographic, for sure. For sure. But I do think that what really pushes the liberals over the edge for as long and has let them limp along for as long as they have is that they really were the first political group to actually say climate change exists, we're taking this seriously, and we're going to do something about it. And we, as millennials, failed to recognize that that was always a lie. That, yeah, maybe they did acknowledge it, but they banned straws. You know, that's the extent. Emissions have gone up under Trudeau. That's all you need to know. He's bought pipelines. That's all you need to know. Like, Justin Trudeau is going to go down in history as one of the most fraudulent prime ministers ever. Like, what's his legacy? What has he achieved? What has he done? What did he manage? Right? Like, he would stand up and say, well, I got us through the pandemic. And it's like, yeah, how'd you do that? You erected a basic income and then destroyed it. Like, shut the fuck right up. Just this foofy-haired loser. Well, okay, I can understand if you're into him that way, CR Strifey. Right? Al Content, good to see you. His legacy will be the same as his dad's. That's the thing, Al, is that at least his dad, like his dad was responsible for setting up the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, right? Like, his dad actually had something of a vision. His dad understood that he was there to build something, you know? Like, and you can critique Pierre Elliott Trudeau, and there are things to critique, obviously, but he at least understood that being the Prime Minister of Canada means that you're attempting to build a legacy, you're attempting to build something, and you're attempting to build an institution, you're attempting to continue legitimizing the structure of governance, right? He understood all of that, right? His son does not. His son is just an empty haircut. That's all. His son is just an empty fucking haircut. Jesus tap dancing Christ. I'm reading that Biden is thinking about forgiving 10K student debt for some. Yeah, motherfucker, just say who you intend to keep on the hook. Yeah. Yeah, no, they're not going to do that. They're not going to do that. They're not going to forgive the student debt, right? They're going to say that they're going to do it, right? Vote for us in the midterms and we'll cancel student debt. Vote for me, Joe Biden, for a second term, and I'll cancel the student debt. They're not going to do that. It's just another grift, right? Like, who owns this student debt, right? It's like 401ks and shit. there are large institutional players in play who want to keep that student debt going. They want to keep these people in poverty, right? The military certainly does, right? It's a great way to drive people into the military, right? If the only option you give people is things like the military to get student forgiveness or get debt forgiveness or to pay off your loans or any of that kind of stuff, I don't know why they would ever actually do it. Sure, the wine mums are seized with the rhetoric, but as long as their standard of living isn't materially changed. Yep, exactly. Pierre Trudeau was a far more intellectual and influential politician. A formidable intellect, yeah. His son was a photogenic frontman, yeah. Like, Pierre Elliott Trudeau understood what his position was. I think that's the big difference, is that he understood what it meant to be the prime minister, you know? Like, everyone, if you asked anyone on the street, you could stop people on the street and just be like, hey, if you were the prime minister, what's one thing that you would do? Everyone is going to tell you something. Everyone's going to be like, you know what, I would really try to do X. I would really try to do Y. I would really try to achieve this. I'd really try to do that. And a lot of the shit's going to be dumb, for sure, but at least it's a vision, right? Would you find anyone on the streets that would say, I'm basically just going to keep it as it is and faff around? That's essentially Trudeau's legacy. He's just doing what he's told. Like, his whole career as the prime minister has been taking hold of cue cards that he has and reading them. That's it. That's his entire prime ministership. He just reads cue cards handed to him by the fossil fuel industry, by this, that, or the other thing. And then when the time comes to stand up and vote, he goes, yeah. And that's it. He doesn't write legislation. He doesn't do any of this kind of stuff. The fossil fuel industry writes his legislation for him. Right? And like maybe he goes to these execs and goes, well, you know, we did say we gotta do something about climate change, so we gotta do something. Right? Yeah, I think Justin's just a fail son. He understands the legacy thing, but he's just a Gen X fail son. Yeah. The wife says hi, she likes that you curse. Well, fucking great. Good opportunity to say like, share, subscribe, guys. Send it around. Tell people I exist. Let the world know, right? We gotta keep building. We gotta keep building. It's as simple as this. We gotta keep building. We gotta show these guys that we know what's going on. And we gotta show these guys that there are voices that are willing to stand up to them. We've got to. There is no other choice, right? There is no other choice. And the difference between me and the other guys that are doing this stuff is that I'm actually trying to funnel you all into the streets, right? That one day there's going to be enough of you in one spot that you all are actually going to do what I say and get into the streets, right? And I'll be here to cover it. I'll be here to talk about it. I'll be here to root with you. I'll be here to cry with you, right? Because that's what we're doing. It's not like fucking Hassan who just sits around and screams at Andrew Tate videos. Like, yeah, God, I wish I could speak to Congress directly. I hate these oiled up running dogs of empire. Yeah. I think saying Pierre was a formidable intellect was a little generous. The dude was a straight up liberal fascist. I don't know about this. Calling Pierre Elliott Trudeau a fascist is a bit of a step. He could speak in a way that made him sound intellectual, but there's a whole lot of empty gestures. Yeah, dude, if you're French-Canadian, you are the wrong person to talk about Pierre Elliott Trudeau. For sure. Like, for sure. Look, say what you want, okay? Say what you want about Pierre Elliott Trudeau, but he's the reason we have the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, right? Like, it's very difficult for me to say that someone like this is that a leader like this who is the reason we have a Charter of Rights and Freedoms was universally bad, right? Like, yes, there are definitely things to critique. Yeah, the FLQ crisis is very much a showing of his whole ass, and he evoked the War Measures Act, right? Like, just like his son evokes the Emergencies Act. And here, absolutely, we're in a moment here where we can critique Pierre Elliott Trudeau. Absolutely. But I feel this way about, like, Harper, right? Like, you could critique Harper, and there's definitely things, but he actually did have things happen in his tenure that were good. The childcare benefit, right? And to me, it's not enough, especially when you look back historically. It's not enough to simply say this guy was all bad, this guy was all good, right? It's just not enough. It's not good enough for me, right? I want to have a more complex, more robust perspective of these figures, these historical figures. It's going to be tough when it comes to actually analyzing the legacy of Trudeau, of Justin, right? Like what's he accomplished? What's his big win? Banning straws, right? Not even close to good enough. Mocked says, good to see you, by the way, Mocked. Always a pleasure. In Frankfurt, on the Oder, there are 200 to 400 tons of dead fish carcasses, according to Dr. Uwe Brannock. The Institute for Inland Fisheries estimates that 25 to 50% of the fish there have been killed. Holy shit, dude. Holy fucking shit. What? Bro. Institute for Inland Fisheries, Frankfurt. Fish dead. Mysterious mass fish kill in Oder River. Climate change or poison? Experts are still trying to determine the cause of death of thousands of fish last week in the Oder River that borders Germany and Poland, this time in the vicinity of the eastern city of Frankfurt. The reports came just 2 weeks after Polish anglers reported removing tons of dead fish from the Oder near the town of Olawa, about 300 kilometers upstream from the most recent fish die-off. At the time of the reports in Poland, water authorities based in the nearby Polish city of Wrocław detected a toxic substance in 2 locations on the Oder that is likely the solvent mesitylene, which is known to have a harmful effect on fish. However, subsequent tests have shown no trace of the substance. Mercury was also identified as a potential culprit, but Polish Environment Minister Anna Moskwa said on Sunday that completed fish tests for mercury and heavy metals proved to be negative. Lab tests did not show high levels of saliency in the water. Local authorities have warned residents, along with pets and livestock, not to touch the river water. Still no proof of poison. While German and Polish authorities believe contamination is the cause of the die-off, political leaders who met on Sunday say water tests gave no definitive proof. As of today, none of these tests have confirmed. Here's a heat and drought. Christian Walter, researcher at the Department of Fish Biology, Fisheries and Agriculture at the Lisbon Institute of Freshwater Ecology and Inland Fisheries, said the problems on the Oder may run deeper. Fish in the river are struggling, he said, due to lower oxygen levels caused by historically low water levels, which has been a trend since 2018. We've been reporting on that trend here. And high water temperatures of around 25 degrees Celsius. When fish are stressed, respiration goes up, meaning that they need more oxygen. This situation has been exacerbated by ongoing discharges of wastewater into the Oder. This is legal, wouldn't usually matter, but with lower water levels, you get higher concentration of oxygen-consuming salt and organic material. Added to the mix is work on the Polish side of the Oder building groins rigid structures created with rock, soil, and gravel to prevent erosion. This has increased sediment, which also reduces oxygen levels in already shallow water. Oh my God. Europe's rivers are running dry as the climate crisis worsens. Look at this shit, dude. This is in Spain. And I was just I was just on TikTok. I hope I can actually. I didn't. Look, nearly 50% of the EU was under drought warning by the end of July. Look at this fucking map, dude. Like, and I saw recently China 70-day heat wave. Look at this. Look at this picture right here. This is brutal. Like, there's a... In a year where climate records from floods, fire, and drought are being shattered daily, there is one country that bests them all, China. The country is experiencing a heat wave like no other. It lasted over 70 days with record-breaking temperatures at day and night. Yeah, fires in China too. This is why China is working so hard, and people are critiquing China, rightly, that because right now the number one emitter of fossil fuels is China. But why is that the case? It's China because they're doing everything they can to move their power grid to renewable energy, right? That's what they're trying to do, and that's the reason why they're spiking up. The historical emitter is the United States. And why is it the United States? Because it has the largest war machine. That's the reason why it's the largest emitter. And so if China actually does go through an emissions reduction, right, they'll go through an emissions reduction while having renewable energy sources. If the United States goes through an emission reduction, right, it'll have nothing. It'll have absolutely nothing. So the United States is not going to do an emissions reduction, by the way. It's just not going to happen. Like, maybe they'll reduce it like 10% or something as a token in order to get a vote or something. Ugh. His big win is the Cannabis Act. Yeah, I mean, yeah. Congratulations, Trudeau. You legalized the smoking of a plant we were all smoking anyway. Oh yeah, the river in Europe. Yeah, largest fish die. Has to do with the climate crisis. Yeah, dude, this is fucking a disaster. The Polish government is a right-wing party that undoubtedly kowtows to Polish industry. Yeah. It's probably a chain reaction. I was at my parents' house in Northern Ontario last week, and the water on their lake was like a foot lower than it normally is. Yeah. By the way, we all hear on The Rebel is about the Dutch farmer freedom protests. Yeah, they're using that the Dutch farmer protests as a way to continue fueling and agitating support for the Freedom Convoy, which, near as I can tell, anytime I take a look at that Freedom Convoy, I'm just like, this is a convoy of people being like, we need capitalism again. Freedom for capitalists to buy and sell us. Freedom. That's essentially their demand at this stage. It's hysterical to me that the people who are most galvanized and most interested in actually taking over infrastructure, taking to the streets, are essentially just like screaming, "Hey, we gotta do it." Hey, John, where do you get your news on China? Honestly, I know people are gonna shit on me for this, but what is it? China Today? No, it's not China Today. What the hell is the name of the thing? I'm completely blanking. I mean, Al Jazeera is a great source. For fuck's sake, China propaganda news site. No, see, there you go. You can go to the Global Times. That's fine, right? CGTN, that's the one I was actually thinking of. CGTN. I tend to use all of them, honestly. And, like, my position on propaganda and state propaganda is extremely simple. If you know it's propaganda, it's fine, right? If you know the source, it's fine, right? You can use anything you like, as long as you know the source, right? So if you're getting the news from Global Times or CGTN or any of this, right, and somebody says that's just state-run propaganda, your response should be, yeah, like we know. Like, that's fine. It's like CBC, right? I use CBC articles, right? It's fine. As long as you know, right? As long as you know. White propaganda? Mark Birnbaum? I don't know if I've ever seen you here before, Mark. Maybe I have. I don't remember. White propaganda. I wouldn't say that the Global Times or CGTN is white propaganda. Versus gray or black. I don't think I understand your comment, dude. That's as simple as that. As long as you know that what you're looking at has a bias, right? As long as you know that what you're looking at is got that bias, it's still good, right? And then it's up to I see what you're saying, Bob. White propaganda sources, no, right? Yes, yeah. As long as that's not a bad way of saying it, right? As long as it's the source is known, that's fine. It's and then of course if the source is like, you know, like a billionaire, you know, you can read it and you can understand that, but you take it with that grain of salt that this is coming from a billionaire, right? And but even like if RT News, right? RT News got banned here in North America, right? Like we banned RT News across the board, which I call hysterically fascistic. And of course it's Russian propaganda. That's the thing I find so stupid, right? You say something like, well, hey, here's this piece of information, right? There's this event that occurred that's being reported, and people go, that's just Russian propaganda. And I'm like, yeah, okay. Does that mean it's false? Right? That's what's weird about that whole Russian propaganda thing, is that it's not a statement. It's meaningless. Russian propaganda. It's like saying purple, pink, and yellow. Like, it doesn't mean anything, right? Well, okay, but what does that have to do with the veracity of the statement? Is it true or not, right? And usually, if it's on RT, right, and of course it's going to be pro-Russian, of course, or at least neutral to Russia. But is it true, right? SCMP pushes anti-China narratives, but they're usually pretty balanced. Yeah, I mean, like, so basically when it comes to propaganda, like, it's fine. Like, I'll use National Post sources, like, I'll do that, right? But understand that's coming from a billionaire, right? That's the billionaire class, and that's what they think. Like, you read the Financial Post, and that's the billionaire class, that's what they think, right? So as long as you know the source, and as long as you're kind of putting that into your mindset, then it's completely fine. And it usually is, right? And usually if you do the digging, right, you find out that there's a third-party source. It only gets really bad when you start to get into, like the Uyghur genocide narrative, right? Like, that's where you got to do some real digging, and then you find out it's the CIA, and as soon as you find out that it's the CIA, that discredits itself. The CIA is an untrustworthy terrorist organization, right? You can't... It would be like trusting a source from, like, I don't know, the Nazis, right? Like, if the Nazis said it, you'd be like, probably not, right? So, some sources you just can't trust. And some sources you can trust, but you can trust them to be a certain way. So, like, billionaires will always be pro-capitalist, for example, right? It doesn't mean the information they're giving you is false. It just means that they have their perspective, that you should be owned and do all the work while they sit around and do nothing, right? That's their perspective. Democracy Now! How do you guys feel about Democracy Now! I think, straight up, guys, I think Democracy Now! Has had to make some understandable concessions in order to remain operable. Everything that follows is speculative. First of all, before I get into it, just to put you on the hook, ad break. Everything that follows is completely speculative, okay? I genuinely do think, like, you take a look at what's happened to people like Edward Snowden, you take a look at what's happened to people like Julian Assange, you take a look at the banning of RT, you take a look at what's happened to people like Phil Donahue, people like Chris Hedges, repeatedly, over and over again, right? Like, Democracy Now! Knows pretty cleanly that they can be taken off the airwave, They can be shut down, right? That just like the cops are kicking in Clara Sorrenti's door, they can kick in the door of Amy Goodman. Like, they can do that. There's nothing stopping them, right? That the only reason they allow a place like Democracy Now! To continue existing is because if they actually did that, it would absolutely delegitimize themselves, right? Even though I say that's already come and gone, right? The system's already delegitimized itself. They just don't want to drop the hand completely and say to everybody, yeah, we're fascists. Yeah, what are you going to do about it? Right? Even though I think it's coming. And so Amy Goodman and Democracy Now! Are a Star Wars collection of hope. Oh, wow, very nice. A Star Wars collection of soap. But Amy Goodman and Democracy Now! Know that they're on the line, right? And so for people who are saying of Democracy Now!, which I think Radio Halifax is voicing something like this, it used to be better before the Ukraine war, and it used to be better even before that, right? That essentially as it's gained prominence, it's had to be a lot more cautious about how it reports and what it reports and the positions that it's taking, because it knows that if it steps over the line, these fascists will wipe them out. It knows that. It's like it's done it before. It'll do it again, and so it's had to placate the monster, right? If the choice is between not talking about things in a certain way or like clamping down on things and placating the monster and remaining on television, or actually reporting on what's happening and then getting wiped out, well, they've made their choice. They've made their choice. So okay, we got people calling in the chat here. Chris Hedges is on the Real News now. Yeah, I mean, they can't shut that guy up, man. They're trying. They've tried, and the Chris Hedges channel on YouTube is doing very well. All right, we're doing a number draw. I just saw there's 16 people right now. I expect to see 16 numbers. Anything less?
Here we go for today's.
It's just you lovely lurkers. Just you lovely lurkers. What do we got? We got a 7. We got an 8. We got a 2, 4, 5, 4. A 7. You know what, man? I'm going for number 1. I'm number 1. I'm number 1. I'm Baldy McNosehair. Bro, I've never seen you here in my life, and I love it. I love your name. Baldy McNosehair. Absolutely perfect, dude. Come on. Number 1. I'm number 1. I'm number 1. 6. Who hit it? Somebody had a 6, right? 7, 8, 2, 4, 5, 4, 7, 4, 7. No way. Everybody get completely fucked. Everybody in chat right now, get fucked. We literally, what a fucking loser David Lynch is. Picking a 6. He knew. He just threaded the needle. And everybody who picked a 5 and a 7, get extra fucked. You know what though, Mark? Because a 9 is an upside down 6, you catch a little piece of it. You get a little piece of it. And because 3 is half of 6, heroism, you can catch a piece of it too. Just a little piece. Just a little piece, okay? Don't feel too good about yourself. But you could feel okay. You could feel okay. In the Revolution, Star Wars gets banned, all of it. Blame capitalist overexposure. I mean, Mark's just, yes! Oh, yes, this is just, oh, so good. Now, look, Star Wars, I'm actually of the opinion that Star Wars is going to be the thing that finally, like, it's going to reveal itself. Fascism is going to reveal itself through these Marvel movies and through these, through Star Wars. I talk about this all the time, so I won't go too deep, but, like, just watch. Just watch them present someone like Darth Vader or Kylo Ren to us, like a fascist, right? Just a straight up fascist, and make us go and act as though this is the hero of the piece. right? This is the hero of the piece, that we're supposed to admire this person, right? Like, watch until Homelander shows up, and we're all supposed to go, oh, it's Homelander, swoon, right? It's fucking coming, right? And I know it exists within the consciousness of people. Like, when I see all these people watching superhero shit or a serial killer shit, when I see people really venerating, like, Twilight, for God's sakes. Like, Twilight's the creepiest shit of life. Like, literally. The idea that we're supposed to look at Edward and be like, oh man, he's just a bad boy. I'm like, no, he's not. Edward is a fucking demon. Like, literally. He's a vampire. Show you the vampire who sparkles. But he's a fucking vampire. Right? And we're all just supposed to be like, oh, Swoony McSwooner, he's so misunderstood. No, he's not. He's a literal demon. And as the story goes on, he gets more and more demonic. And, like, does creepier and creepier shit. Like, bonding with a baby. Like, that kind of, creepy pedophilic shit. And, like, we're all supposed to be like, oh, it's just this one, it's somewhere romance and shit. Like, fucking unbelievable. Right? Well, just wait. Just wait until, like, oh, hey, Adomo's The Stars Down to Earth and Other Essays on the Irrational in Culture talks about this a lot. Oh, let's take a look at that. I'm not going to read it on the stream, but I'm going to pull that up. Oop, over here. You come over here. All right, cool. I'm going to look into that. Humans have a secret urge to be ruled. It's got to be the case, eh? Like, for all these guys all the guys that are walking around screaming about freedom, right? All the guys that are walking around being like, freedom! Well, when you actually investigate what freedom they're talking about, and you actually find out, well, freedom for what? It literally is like the freedom to be ruled. The freedom to be owned is really what they're arguing for. Over and over again. It's the same thing again and again. And if you actually say to them, like, hey, isn't this going to lead to people being abandoned and, like, homelessness and all this? Their response is literally like, yeah. Adoma was a Jewish philosopher that had escaped Nazi Germany and then noticed what happened in Germany was starting to happen in America and noticed it through pop culture. Dude, yeah. Like, when I was in university, I did a lot of research on Nazism and all of that kind of stuff. And I said for, like, years to my friends, I would be like, yeah, this is what happened in Nazi Germany, right? I was always saying it, to the point where my friends told me to shut up about it. And so I did. And I wish I hadn't. I wish I had gone into it more. Yeah, that's because the freedom fighters are all right-wing authoritarians. Yeah, like, their idea of freedom is literally like, the founding fathers were really free. Yep, free to own slaves. Because, you know, as long as you don't view black people or people of color as humans, then you can believe that that's freedom. Adorno and Marcuse were demoralized Stalinists who saw the rise of fascism and gave up on revolutionary struggle. I mean, it's hard to judge people for that, dude. I know I've done that in my life. Like, I know that I have struggled and tried to organize and given up the ghost, for sure. And I'll be straight with you guys right now. I'll confess something to you guys right now. If capitalism had just stabilized itself, and I just kind of kept the last job that I have, and just stayed as, like, the manager or assistant manager of some fucking toy store or something, that's probably what I would have done, right? That capitalism creates its own enemies, and it can't help itself. It can't help itself, right? Like, all the capitalists need to do to shut guys like me up or depower guys like me completely is, like, provide the basics to people. That's what's so shocking about the basic income conversation, right? If they wanted guys like me to lose a lot of power and have a lot of, and wanted revolutionary struggle to lose a lot of energy, they'd pass a basic income. And they can't. They can't even do that. They're so detached from reality and so detached from basic empathy and compassion and even reason, right? They're detached entirely. They can't even do it. Aren't you saying that capitalism can be done better then? But yeah, capitalism can be done better then, right? That's something that I'll admit, right? Like you can sharpen the blade, like you can make it work better. You can govern, right? Like you can govern, right? Like you can actually say, "Oh, perhaps we should govern." And govern. That's the thing that's so shocking about these guys. Is that their whole ethos is govern. We don't need to govern. We'll just let the owners of the society decide how it's got to be structured, right? Forget about responding rationally to the demands of the populace. What are they gonna do? Right? And to me, that's not even like doing capitalism better. That's just like stabilizing your society better, right? Like, of course you can stabilize your society. Like, of course you can. You just have to actually govern and actually make decisions in order to actually do something, right? Adorno saw stuff like May 68th. I don't know what you're talking about, but happening, and this type of liberalism is going to lead to fascism, yeah. British black propaganda radio station during World War II operated by Political Warfare Executive Service and claimed to be an illegal radio station operating within Nazi Germany. Brutal. Yeah, dude, the more I find out about, like, the links between America, even Britain, and the Nazis, the more it makes capitalism look like fucking psychos. And CR, just to loop back on what I was saying before, though, that doesn't mean I think the system of capital can work in the long term. Right? I don't think it can. Like it's all because in the end it's always going to result this way. It's always going to create these people who become so detached and so incapable of basic reason, right? Literal kindergarten level reason of like, if you put your finger on a flame, you'll burn your finger, so don't do that. Like, straight up. Like, if you stop paying people to and they can't live, they'll foment revolution, so don't do that, right? It's real basic shit we're talking about. And they just can't help themselves. They've gone psychopathic. They're incapable. They're just incapable. I do want to read this. All one has to do to read the tenets of the Frankfurt School and see what these people were about, poster children for the pseudo-left. Yeah, he came to the country where Nazism drew most of their inspiration from. But don't also keep saying that capitalism can be maintained. But like this is, I mean, we're not in capitalism anymore, first of all, right? Like, if this was a capitalist society, a lot of these businesses would fail, right? The government would be like, yeah, you said that you could do it and you can't, so get out, right? Like but that's not what's happening. That these people are being bailed out, that their wealth is becoming structural, because we live in a fascist society. We don't live in a capitalist society anymore. They probably don't bother passing UBI because we quite literally have done little to shake the system yet. Well, and if I was a billionaire, if I was one of these oligarchs, I would absolutely say to the populace regularly, oh, I'm going to make you fight for the tiniest little scrap, right? So that if you actually organize and try to do a big ask, then I'll really fight. Right? Turn everything into the biggest, most grinding fight you can possibly make, so that people won't even think, oh, well, this big ask is so beyond the scope. Right? So, literally, I don't want my children to starve. Make people grindingly fight and fight for years in order to make it so that their children don't starve. And that's it. Right? Like, don't give anything away for free. I remember him now, the culture industry. Capitalism, a system of greed for sure, yeah. May 68 was a French general strike that really didn't do anything but made people feel good. Once it was over, everyone went back to work. It was like a pseudo-revolution, yeah. Yeah, capitalism could for sure be better maintained. Look, Denmark, social corporatism, how capitalism should work. Do you, general you, so C.R. Strifey is asking the world, think UBI should be one income or proportional to individual needs? I'm more or less of the opinion that if a UBI is actually done, it should simply be like set, like this is the number, everyone gets it, shut up, like that's it. And anybody that comes in and tries to dick with it should be hollered at, like just shove it down, because like anybody who's coming in to do and dicker with it, all they're trying to do is ensure that black people don't get it, that kind of stuff. Right? They're just trying to ensure that black people don't get it, that you can only buy rice with it, like those sorts of evil dickerings, right? Yeah. Amazon's tax bill per year alone could pay for our UBI. Yeah. Like it could be done. I'm not necessarily I used to be a big supporter of a basic income. I used to really believe in it, and I organized along it and all that kind of stuff. But as I've gotten farther along, I've seen that they're going to pass something like a basic income to maintain this failed system, right? As a way to try to make it so that we'll accept the privatization of the entire system, so that we'll make it so that everyone will just accept the shittier quality of life and the shittier sort of stuff. Because they're all getting a paycheck that probably won't even pay the rent anymore. Yep. Watson usually says it best. It's a bourgeoisie con designed to placate a populace the ruling class doesn't need for the creation of surplus value anymore due to automation. Yeah, I think that's a pretty fine way of saying it, Watson. And they'll essentially set the rent at exactly the rate of the basic income, so it'll end up just being a subsidy for landlords. Right? That's basically what it is. What does unconditional mean? Just everybody gets it. Are you a Canadian citizen? You get it. That's what it means, right? You just get it. And I also do think that includes the rich, right? That the rich get it too, so that they can see how pithy it is, so that they can see what they're actually crying about. Should everybody get the same amount regardless of where they live? Yeah, everybody should get it where they live. Disability is a different thing. We have an entirely different system for that, right? Like, basic income, are you alive? Are you breathing? Are you a Canadian citizen? You get it. No more questions. No more scratching the head about it. No more this, that, or the other thing. This is the number. You get that number. You are alive. Here it is. And that's the end of the discussion. Like that is how I view it. If you're going to do it, that's the only thing that I would accept. Because in my view, anything else is literally just how do we make sure black people don't get it. That straight up. I don't think that the people who are attempting to dicker with it are doing so in good faith. I think that they're doing so that they can ensure that the people they don't like don't get it. In Norway, that's how it works. You can make $300K a year, still get paid $29,000 welfare payment that you have to pay back. UBI can be used to close tax loopholes too. So you get your disability support on top of that? I mean, I think so. Like, we already abandon the disabled here. Like, we give less to people on disability here than the United States does. Like, we've straight out abandoned our disabled. There's no other way to describe it. It's abandonment. So, oh no, they also get a basic income. Like, also. I'm fine with that. Like, I don't know why we're caught in this weird little psychological idea that, oh no, a poor person got enough money to have food. Like, oh no, people aren't homeless anymore. Oh no. Like, what a weird little society we have. Where you gotta earn it. You gotta earn it. And you gotta sell yourself to a billionaire and you gotta earn it. Shut up. No, you don't. Like, no, you don't. What a con. What an obvious overt grift. Nobody asked to be here. You didn't earn this life. You didn't earn being born. You didn't earn anything. Nothing is earned. You don't earn a thing. Right? You didn't earn the air. You don't earn the food. You didn't build the building with your own two hands. right? You didn't build the roads. You didn't build the electrical system. You didn't build any of this. Nobody built any of this, right? The people who came before us did, and they did us a big favor by doing it. And when they were doing it, they weren't sitting there being like, I hope those guys really earn it. I hope they really earn it. No, they did it because it was the right fucking thing to do. Because they were all sitting around being like, yeah, we'd like to make the place better for our children and for our children's children. Because that's what a sane, rational person does. Is it this idea that, like, it's completely fine for capitalists to withhold billions of dollars, food, shelter, all the kind of stuff. And if you don't earn it, then I'm like, shut up, you're fascists. Like, it is as simple as this. It's just as fucking simple as this. UBI will replace all those programs and harmonize them. This is why the neoliberal UBI will be worse than an actual Soviet. Yeah, I think that's accurate, for sure. Earn it equals go and get abused and traumatized to make someone else rich. Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, they did it for a paycheck though too. There's no denying that. Yeah, they while also working in like a labor union, while also like protesting. Right, I gotta be straight, guys. Like, I feel like our grandparents. Like, my grandparents would be looking at this situation being like, what the fuck? What? We used to shoot guns at these people. Like, what the fuck is this? Like, my grandma would be fucking losing her brains about all this shit, dude. Like, she would be doing exactly this. If she was alive today, if my grandma Beth was alive today, this is exactly what she would be doing. And she would be talking exactly this way. Right? She would just be saying, like, this is fucking embarrassing what we're doing. What are we doing? Like, are you kidding me? We're just letting these crooks and con men and liars and thieves and frauds to just run the place, and we're not surrounding their houses? Like, why? What the fuck are you talking about? It's absolutely what my grandma would be saying. Right? This idea that, like, we're gonna go down quietly. Like, that's the thing that kills me about all of this, is that we're just gonna go down quiet. We're just gonna silently bow our heads and march towards the apocalypse, being like, yeah, I didn't earn it. What a baby culture. Like, what a just a culture of total wimps and losers. If these current material conditions were happening 50 years ago, we'd be mid-revolt right now. Yeah. Yeah. Like, I think that that's actually true. Like, our grandparents knew what was up, right? Like, these are people who literally went to war, right? And so when they came home, they weren't sitting there, like, they knew how to get shit done, and they knew what to do about it, right? Yeah, not even 50 years ago, 1980s, yeah. That, like, during the 1980s, there was all this promise of, like, oh yeah, things will, this will be a way to do it and all this kind of stuff, and we just kind of let it happen, right? We just kind of let it occur, right? Like, it was just one big fucking con job. The whole thing was just a fucking, like, enormous con job. Gen Zs will save us. Us millennials didn't do shit. I don't think that's true, Christopher. I do think the millennials, like, we pushed the bar, we fought back. We were pushing uphill a lot of the way, right? A lot of it was, like, you think about something like the Occupy movement, right? While it didn't get anything in terms of actual legislation, it definitely was a cultural push. You got to accept how powerful anti-communist propaganda has been, right? That, like, the existence of someone like Bernie Sanders saying, I'm a socialist, how actually important that shift actually is, right? Like, CIA propaganda through the television system was absolutely enormous. My critique of the millennials is that we got taken in by grifters. We got taken in by people like Obama, and we got taken in by people like Trudeau, and that really depowered the millennial generation in a lot of ways. That we put in this energy. There were big protest moments here in the city of Toronto. There was 100,000 people in the streets about climate change, and then when Trudeau took that energy and said, we're going to do something about it, we all believed him, instead of going to his house and surrounding it until he actually did something, right? Which is what we should have done immediately. It's what we should have done. We should still be there. Like this ridiculous idea. And yeah, Zoomers will definitely feel the pain of climate change. They'll be a very angry group of people. I mean, I'm starting to see videos. I keep forgetting to set up my sound system so that I actually can do this. So this is going to be a bit annoying, but I'm going to play it anyway. Like, let me know if this is shitty. This is straight up somebody talking. Yeah. Yeah, if you're just listening in, like this is essentially somebody like outright telling you, like he's in a sorry guys, I didn't get my sound set up properly. I hate videos. I hate the whole process. It's so fucking annoying. This is essentially a video of somebody admitting, like they're being interviewed talking about robbing rich people. Right, and he's talking about how he uses Instagram as a way to hunt and rob rich people. That's what this video is, right? We here at the Canadian Commie do not defend or espouse this as a legitimate thing to do. Let me be very clear about that, so I don't get banned on YouTube, and also because I have a soul and I'm empathetic, right? And the Also, I got to tell you guys in chat, please do not actively support this kind of behavior because we want to continue existing as a channel. Thank you very much, YouTube. Do not ban us. But what this video is a fellow being interviewed, and you can see what he's wearing, right? You can see what he's wearing, right? And they've distorted his voice and all this kind of stuff. And that is true. The RSDP under Lenin used bank robbery as a means of acquiring funds. Right, and yeah, exactly. No amount of masking, voice changing would make me feel comfortable interviewing about robbing rich people. Yeah, but I think this what you're seeing here is a frustrated person, right, and a person who wants people to know how bad it's gotten, right? Like he's living this life, right? Like the difference between you and Emily and me and this fellow is that we can sort of exist within the abstract on this. That we can sit here and we live in a kind of fantasy space. We think about like Robin Hood, right? This guy's doing it. He's living it. This is what he's setting out to do. And while sure there's a financial incentive, it also has to come down to just like people need to know how shitty things have gotten and how bad things are. That these kinds of people exist. What this guy does is he uses Instagram to hunt rich people down, and then he mugs them. Later on in the video, he outright says, sometimes I just tase them. I just use a taser, tase them, take their money and walk away, right? And like people post their shit on Instagram, he finds out where they live, and he cases them, right? Oh yeah, doing the interview puts a target on his back for sure. For sure. Brings awareness to what's going on, brings awareness to what's happening. And I'm of the opinion that it should. That he should do these interviews and he should do this kind of stuff. He should let the general populace know. Right? Because the general populace needs to be aware. Like, a guy like this should never exist. If guys like this exist in your society has failed. Just period. Right? And it's failed because the cops haven't stopped him. It's that a person like this should never feel like doing this, spending the time doing this is beneficial. Right? Like, why ever do this kind of thing? Why ever pursue this kind of thing? Stuff like this will only intensify. This person is so good at GTA 5. Yeah, dude. Yeah, getting tased looks rough as shit, yeah. Like, the kind of stuff that happens in Mexico will start happening here more and more, yeah. Rather than go to the public, I'd maybe form a network instead and organize rather than publicize it before you're big enough to not get taken down, yeah. Quit hating on pro gamers, John, and get good. Wow, Cotton. The connection to, like, video game thinking, I think is actually pretty accurate. I do think a guy like this probably does think about it like Grand Theft Auto, right? Like, why not? Right? You're not giving this guy a foothold in the society. You're not giving this guy anything he can do legitimately, right? You're actively destroying the society, not just through climate change, but through the process of wealth extraction, right? And now he's so entrenched and so in this that now he's doing fucking interviews about it. Like, how much longer until figures like this become notorious? How much longer until we have like a Banksy of this kind of shit? How much longer until one of these guys has like a mask that we all recognize? How much longer until there's like a supervillain type character who's going around leaving his mark on shit, right? How much longer until all that starts happening in big and serious ways, right? Like, video games are everywhere. Why not be influenced or inspired by them? Yeah, we call rich people that do this kind of things landlords. Banksy is a joke. I mean, Banksy is an artist of his own kind of quality, but like, he doesn't matter. I think is my thing with Banksy. Like, he just doesn't really matter. Like, people seem entranced by Banksy, but really at the end of the day, he's just like a dude that goes and sprays spray paint on walls. You know, like he doesn't really matter. Like, he does like little prankster shit every so often, but again, it doesn't really matter. Anyone following the potential of a railroad strike in the U.S. looks like the rank and file is preparing to defy the unions and Biden's PEB. Possible PATCO situation coming up. I hope so. I'm of the opinion that the whole thing should go on strike. Like, if you're not on strike, you should go on strike. Like, if you're in an industry that's not planning a strike right now or isn't talking about strike right now, then you should go and start talking about it. Because, like, there's no legitimacy in this system anymore. That it is a system of extraction, and there is coming a moment for every worker. There is coming a moment where the ruling class will just go boop and cut you off and just say, go get fucked. Go get another job that don't exist, that isn't part of the system, all that. They are fine if you are homeless. They are fine to abandon you. They don't care about you. They don't care about you at all. And the second they realize, oh, we can make 0.000000001% profit by ruining this person's life and abandoning them, they will absolutely do it. They're planning on it. It's the structure of the system. And so we should be on. The fact that we're not already in mass strikes, to me, is just like absolutely a sign of the weakness of our society. Like, on a deep cultural level, on a deep spiritual level. Landlords are cheaters. They need to be permabanned from the server. They use hacks. Yeah, we do need a new patch. That's for sure. Look, no. It's not that they're cheaters. It's just that the system, like the game is structured to permit that type of gameplay behavior, right? We just need to patch the system, right? To instead of giving players the opportunity to become landlords, you got to ensure that shelter is provided by the structure of the system itself. That's it. Just eliminate this form of gameplay. If the major railroads go on strike during a potential war drive, the U.S. ruling class will show its true colors out in the open. I mean, I don't know what people need to see. Like, it's not like they're hiding. You know? Like, I don't know. Like, everybody, like, I hear this, you say this from time to time, Watson, and I hear this from other people, where, oh, the U.S. is going to really show its true colors. Like, what are you talking about? How have they not shown their true colors for the last 50 years? Like, the invasion of Libya alone, the invasion of Iraq, the invasion of Afghanistan. Like, how are these guys anything but Nazis? Like, what has convinced us that these guys are not just overt Nazi-level fascists, right? Yeah, those kids in cages, right? The ICE detention centers. Like what do we need? Like, where's Where's the... Yeah, that's fair. Anemone, absolutely. The last 300 years. Like, where's the flip? Like, where's the switch where we finally all go, oh... It's right in front of our faces. Like, is it going to actually take a guy with a funny little mustache standing in front of us doing Nazi salutes in front of a swastika for all of us to go, I guess they are Nazis. I guess that's the truth. Like, at what point in our history have we ever acted in any other way than just crazed lunatic fascists? And, like, on its own populace, the only reason we have had this glimmering flicker of a moment where people are not living in grinding slavery and poverty is because the populace itself stood up against the power structure, right? The labor movement, the civil rights movement, right? These enormous pushes by the populace itself to make enormous gains, and now that those things are being obliterated in front of our eyes, right? Because the only way that we're actually getting anything is by actually, well said, well, yes, John, because socialism, 100 million Che Guevara t-shirt. Mock, man, sometimes you say things that just completely derails me, and I love it. I quit my job in June. I've been on solo strike ever since. Join me, folks. I mean, if you can do it, Al. If you can do it. I mean, there's the quiet quitting movement, right? Which is essentially people being like, I'm just going to do the absolute bare minimum. And the capitalist classes being like, oh, you can't do that. That's a problem. I'm like, shut up, fucking losers. Imagine defending capitalists while being a worker. Like, I understand why why like frauds like O'Leary walk around saying the dumbass shit that they say, but like, imagine being a worker and actually defending the system of capital. Like, like, imagine being like just the biggest loser ever. Japan is considering deploying 1,000 cruise missiles. Fantastic. Let's just do it. Let's just go to war. Liberals are basically like Ashley from The Boys. They find a way to tolerate blatant swastikas in public. Yeah. Like, speaking of workers' rights, Ukraine uses Russian invasion to pass laws wrecking workers' rights. 0 hours contracts set to be legalized, and 70% of workforce exempt from workplace protections. The Ukrainian parliament has passed 2 new radical measures on labor liberalization, prompting fears of Ukrainians losing workplace rights permanently, as Russia's war puts huge pressure on the country's economy. Draft Law 5371 had previously been criticized by the International Labor Organization as well as Ukrainian and European trade unions on the basis that it could infringe international labor standards. Like, about 6 months ago now, Zelensky banned left-wing parties, including the opposition party, in parliament. Well, here you go. Right? Ukraine has only one direction it can go. It can only go to the right. It can only become more and more fascist. It's the only thing it can do structurally. And we are going to see Ukraine become a Nazi state. Like, right now it has Nazis integrated into its system, but they haven't fully taken over the system quite yet. But they will, and they are. Right? And they are. And the only reason someone like Zelensky hasn't just been done away with already is because he's playing ball. Right? He's doing what they want. That's literally why I quit my job. I was in a union, and even the union members were anti-union. Yeah, it was bizarro world. Yeah. Like, it just turns out that if you scream a message loudly and long enough, people will just buy into it. Because most people, I think, are just reacting. They don't actually have a spiritual core. That they're just reacting to stimuli that's going around them. Yeah, because arming Japan went so well last time. No shit, eh? This is so they can move weapons manufacturing to Ukraine. I mean, it's doubtful that's going to be successful, frankly. Like, let's put a weapons factory in Ukraine. Yeah, the Russians don't have the capability to blow that up. Like, the moment that happens, the first world would have already forgotten about Ukraine. Like, no, I mean, what has to happen in Ukraine? I haven't done this in a little while, so let's do it. Like, what has to happen? Unless something very, very serious occurs, like unless suddenly 100,000 people suddenly show up in Ukraine, right? What has to happen is that this region, and possibly this region down here, become under the control of Russia, and that's likely, that's like, Russia's already setting up administrative power in the Donbass region. They're already setting up administrative power over here, right? They're never giving it back. That's not going to happen. So it's just whether or not the Ukrainians admit that that's happened, whether it becomes official, right? And so what's going to occur instead is that there's this long grinding process of destroying infrastructure, right? The West says it's us slowing, the Ukrainians have slowed down the Russian advance. No, the Russians have taken the territory they want, right? And they're destroying the infrastructure that was built up from 8 years of shelling in the Donbass, right? That's what's actually happening. And the Russians are destroying that infrastructure. The Russians are pushing through, right? And we're in a process now where, like, you've got so many weapons flooded into Ukraine, well, that now NATO, they don't have any weapons left to give, right? They're like disarming themselves, giving the weapons to Ukraine. And it's amounting to nothing, right? That Russia's getting the territory it wants. It's going to turn this into either a part of Russia, so either the Russian border goes here now, or it becomes its own state, right? And that, I think that's the best option, honestly, that the Donbass region should become its own state and seek international recognition, right? And and Ukraine itself, what remains, will just continue moving more and more towards Nazism, right? That the Azov Battalion and all these sorts of Nazi organizations will continue gaining power in Kiev, and eventually they'll have their own leadership, and they'll basically just be a Nazi state. That's what I expect to see. I don't see any evidence that anything else is going to be the case, right? And then, of course, they'll build up more military power because they're Nazis, right? And they'll try to take the region back. So there'll be another conflict later on that America will fully support and endorse and all that kind of stuff. Please, China, make us ammo to fight you with. Yeah, no shit, eh? Disarming themselves while planning a war with China. Yeah. Well, the plan for the Americans, because the Americans are so arrogant that they tell everybody what their plans are, right? Like, China doesn't tell people what their plans are, you know, when it comes to war. They're not sitting there being like, we're going to reveal everything and tell you what we're going to do. America's plan is not to try to take Chinese mainland. They know that that's not going to happen, right? Their plan is to destroy shipping lanes, right? It's a big reason why China has pivoted so hard into the Belt and Road Initiative, is that they know what the Americans' plan is. The Americans' plan is to destroy shipping in the South China and East China Sea. That's the whole idea. And so but it's not going to work. It's not going to really slow China down, because China can build faster than America can destroy. Like, that's just the end of it. Yeah, they tell you their plan like a movie villain. Yeah, they do. They just straight up tell. That's why Russia has been so successful in pivoting, right? Because Biden told them what the plan was. Biden straight up told Putin what they were planning on doing if he invaded Ukraine. And so it was like, oh, that's what you're going to do. Okay, well, what can I do in response to that? Oh, I can do this. Right? Like, Americans are dumb. They're not smart. Like, sub-intellect. Like, sub-intellectual. But, like, if you're playing a game with someone and you don't tell them what your plan is, right? Unless you really want to give them a scrappy chance. Like, it's fucking we're so embarrassing, man. We're so embarrassing as a people. Like, we can't even do war right. We've never won a war, right? Americans have an annual memory right, for sure. For sure. What do you think, like, Britney Spears is all about? What do you think this Marvel shit's all about? It's to just purge the memory and fall into a fantasy space. Yeah, if we destroy China's shipping, who will make our Happy Meal toys? This will destroy America! Yeah, war with China is the dumbest idea because we don't have a manufacturing base. Like, who will make our stuff? Like, who will make our stuff? The assassination of Alexandra Dugin's daughter over the weekend, coupled with the attacks on Crimea, seemed to be designed to escalate the issue with Russia. Got the prints of the CIA all over that one. I mean, I agree with you, it's got the CIA on it, but I don't think it is as escalatory as all that. Like, this is an ongoing conflict. Like, people know there's going to be shit. At this stage in the game, the only thing that I think really would escalate the situation would be if troops started moving in. That to me is the only thing. Like, I mean, nuclear bombardment, obviously, but, like, if the Polish army started moving troops in, if Hungary won't, but, like, if the Germans started moving troops in, right? If troops started coming in from Italy, France, England, like, there are things that could escalate the situation very seriously. Troop movement would be the one that I would be like, yep, here we go. Right? Things are going to get fucking crazy now. But this whole situation has backfired on the Americans in a way that they can't even possibly imagine. Because they don't plan, they don't think things through. They're basically just cowboys riding around going, yeehaw, like pulling out their big cocks and just swinging around, being like, yeah, we're the king shit of Turd Island. Right? They don't think, they don't have ideas, they don't have thoughts. Right? They're basically monkeys, right? Yep, Alexander Dugin's daughter killed in the weekend in a car bomb. Yep, that definitely happened. Yeah, I think your assessment of it, Watson, is accurate. That it's a CIA hit. For sure it is. Like, I don't know why you'd think about it any other way. Like, even if it wasn't, it's a bit... Really? It seems a bit intentional, don't you think? If we were smart, we would create a North American, South American trading bloc. There's over 1 billion people on both continents, real competition for China. But that would mean respecting our neighbors. We're not gonna fucking do that, dude. We're not interested in that. Don't you know it's a free market economy, right? Don't you know that planning is the antithesis of freedom, and you gotta just gotta pull up your bootstraps and grind set your way to success, right? Forget about building public infrastructure. Forget about building a society. Forget about building a civilization, right? Forget about any of that. We're not interested in any of that. We're not going to do that, right? Literally the last invention that has come out of the West is the internet. Like, that's it. The internet was it. That we're not going to do anything else. That the internet happened, and that happened because of decades and decades of research, of public sector research, right? Like, there's nothing else happening. And, like, we don't make plans, we don't think thoughts, right? We don't create initiatives. We're not trying to do anything. And the only time we do anything is to compete against China or to compete against Russia. Right? We don't actually think like, yeah, this will be good for the public. This will be a good thing to build. This will be a good thing to have for future generations, because that would require thinking, thoughts, and planning, like which we don't do on purpose. And we say we don't do, right? But that's the craziest thing. So we're all walking around being like, let the free market decide. The invisible hand of the free market. And nobody stands up and goes, how is that anything but a dumb little cultish religion? Which is exactly what it is. It's just a dumb little cultish religion that what truly and honestly, and this one's for the new people in the chat, what's the difference between the phrase let the free market decide and let chaos reign? Juxtapose those two statements. What's the difference? Turns out there isn't any. Just let chaos reign. Well, this is what happens when you let chaos reign. Meanwhile, a country that actually makes plans and thinks thoughts and has ideas and tries to actually do something, well, guess what's happening? They're building shit. They're doing stuff. They're improving the quality of life for their own citizens, lifting 800 million people out of poverty, building 300,000 miles of high-speed rail, right? Turning on fucking reactors that burn hotter than the sun, building all the renewable energy sources that we're all going to have to be buying from them, right? These guys are actually thinking thoughts and making plans and doing stuff, right? There's a whole lot of comments in the chat you're not seeing, John. Some not showing up in the chat you are seeing. Odd. It's this weird, like, top... If I go top chat sucks. Live chat's where it's at. Live chat's where it's at. I don't really understand what the difference between these two things are, or why they exist. Top chat sucks. Can you guys also do that? Like, if you are in top chat, does that matter to you guys? And then if I go to live chat, it's so fucking annoying, dude. What a dumb... Ugh. Anyway. Weird. Why? Why is there a difference? I don't understand what the difference is. Maybe this is the type of thing that'll make more sense if there's like 1,000 people, right? So if I go to live chat, it's just like all of this kind of stuff. Where if I go to top chat, it'll be more of the like super chat shit. Because right now you guys, like, the chat is slow enough that I can keep up with it, right? It's one of the things I think about, like, as this channel grows, are you guys gonna get more and more kind of obfuscated or chased out? Some of you guys I'll just make, like, there's a way to do like a subscriber thing and all that kind of stuff, but that's... I have to sit down and actually focus on like the business end of this at some point. And I don't want to. I hate it. I hate the money. I hate the whole idea of the money. I hate the whole concept of interacting with it. I hate the idea that I have to turn this into a money-generating thing. It's like, build your business. Fuck you. That's what I think. Fuck you. That's what I think. Yeah, as I grow, I might need moderators. Yeah, all that kind of crazy, dumbass shit. If you have 10k people, it limits what hits your screen. Oh my god. I don't even want to think about it. So I won't. This one I want to read. I've been wanting to read this for a couple of days now. First things first. Speaking of business, ads inserted. Ad break. So, big reason why I want to read this is because it's a new piece by Chris Hedges. Chris Hedges, in my opinion, is one of the most prolific intellectuals of our age. I think he's incredibly intelligent, incredibly thoughtful, right? I don't agree with every single little thing he says, but I completely understand why he says the things that he says. He's rational, he's reasonable, he's prescient. So, the Chris Hedges Report. Psychology of a Klansman. On January 9th, 1966, the White Knights of the Mississippi Ku Klux Klan murdered the black civil rights activist Vernon Dahmer in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, after firebombing and shooting into his house. It was one of thousands of hate crimes conducted in the South by whites who waged a reign of terror against blacks to frighten them from abandoning calls for desegregation and voting rights. Terrorism by white vigilantes against religious and ethnic minorities is ingrained in the DNA of American society, going back to the slave patrols, and has only escalated in recent years. The FBI recorded 8,263 reported hate crimes in 2020, a 13% jump over 2019. What motivates these people? How do they look at the world? How do they justify to themselves and others these acts of terror? These questions are explored in the new book, When Evil Lived in Laurel, The White Knights and the Murder of Vernon Dahmer, by the former Boston Globe reporter Curtis Wilkie. Wilkie, relying on interviews with participants and meticulous records kept by Tom Landrum, who for 4 years worked as an FBI informant inside the Klan, provides a rare look into the inner workings of white hate and how its extensive network of law enforcement officials, politicians, state and city officials, journalists, preachers, and business leaders colluded in what became a decade of unrelenting terrorism in the South. On January 9th, 1966, the White Knights of the Mississippi Ku Klux Klan murdered the civil rights activist Vernon Dahmer in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, after firebombing, shooting into his house. It was one of the thousands of hate crimes conducted in the South by whites who waged a reign of terror against blacks to frighten them into abandoning calls for desegregation and voting rights. These attacks included threats, beatings, shootings, and arson attacks on black churches, businesses, and homes. The few men charged with these crimes, including murder, were often acquitted by white juries. To this day, over 150 murders, 56 in Mississippi, remain unsolved. Terrorism by white vigilantes against religious and ethnic minorities is ingrained into the DNA of American society. This is kind of a repeat. Skipping. Joining me to discuss his book, When Evil Lived in Laurel, The White Knights and the Murder of Vernon Dahmer, is Curtis Wilkie. You write, many of the Klansmen felt wounded by society, poorly educated, ignorant of modern skills, and consigned to unrewarding jobs. They seethed over their own situations. They were, you say, mostly made up of resentful men who worked the small farms, oil fields, or logging camps, or held jobs on the line of Masonite, a monstrous factory that loomed over the landscape like a brutal force, converting waste wood into fiberboard. This resentment, you write, hardened into a hatred of the black man. Could you speak about this resentment, especially with so many in the white working class today, also in economic freefall? Sure. It's metastasized into hatred and violence. It certainly did here, as you say, at the beginning. It's the sort of thing we're still seeing. I suspect a lot of the people who were involved in January 6th a year ago would come from the same kind of economic straits. And what is it about that economic deprivation that metastasizes into this racial violence? Well, it's a terrible phenomenon that was certainly with us in Mississippi in the 1960s, and manifests itself again outside the South today. It certainly involves demagogic political leaders who whip up under this notion that they are populists. To consider somebody like Donald Trump a populist is quite silly. The populists that I think of, and I think the classic definition of a populist, is basically someone who is coming out of the very situation we're talking about. Poor, sometimes uneducated, resentful, and lashing out at authority, leadership, law. Donald Trump comes from the antithesis of that kind of background. But he certainly has been responsible, I think, for a great deal of the surge in this sort of thing over the last 5 or 6 years. He reminds me so much of George Wallace, 50, 60 years ago. And I went back, actually, during the Trump campaign and listened to George Wallace's speeches, and it was a very similar, almost identical rhetoric, including Wallace's call for violence against his opponents. Yes, and the press. Wallace loved to use the press as foils and would single people out in his speeches. And the Wallace rallies just had this aura of incipient violence about them, which, I never went to a Trump rally. I've happily been retired from journalism for a number of years. But it strikes me as some sort of thing we saw with Wallace when I was reporting and covering Wallace. The difference is that Wallace was always a fringe figure, whereas Trump moved to the epicenter of our American politics, to our distress. Robert Paxton, in his book The Anatomy of Fascism, writes that the Klan was America's earliest example of fascism, and this fascism is wrapped in racialized supremacy, the flag, the cross. And in your book, you write about how the Klan opened with a prayer. They would set up a Klan altar at the meetings, they fined its members for cursing, which I found kind of ironic since they were all then going out to burn someone's house down. They burned crosses. They had chaplains. Its leaders quoted biblical verses to justify segregation and acts of violence. The leader of the Klan group you write about, a guy named Sam Bowers, was an exponent of what he called Christian militancy, was openly at war with the federal government, that he said was in control of atheists and Bolsheviks. The Klan members referred to themselves as redeemers, who would restore Christian values, if need be, through violence to the nation. I wondered if you could address this religious component, especially given the connecting tissue among those who stormed the Capitol on January 6th, and this kind of Christian fascism. Is it the same? Well, it's a perverse Christianity. I don't think it's the kind of thing Jesus Christ would have been very comfortable with. Not only did you have these people using the Bible was a prop at Klan meetings. And the Klansman who led murderous raids on the Dahmer home was actually a minister himself, some fellow named Chris Sessions. And he's self-ordained, but he was a minister. There were ministers involved in those horrific murders on Neshoba County, Mississippi in 1964. One of the ringleaders and the guy who orchestrated Bat and Bowers you mentioned, who was an imperial wizard of this group and the White Knights. He has had a lengthy interview that's in the state archives, and I was able to locate, in which he goes on and on about the Christian militancy. And one of the tenets is that homicide is acceptable if you do it with love. Whatever, it's crazy. The Klan members you write about were often these buffoonish figures. They espoused these wild conspiracies. Theories, very similar to groups such as QAnon. They gave themselves these odd assortments of official titles, like Imperial Wizard and Grand Cyclops. They had this sense of importance and empowerment within the group that the wider society denied them. I wanted you to talk about this aspect of the Klan and its attraction to these people. Well, you're right at it there. It gave them this sense of authority that perhaps they'd never had. Suddenly, they've been anointed. Exalted Cyclops, Grand Dragon, Imperial Wizard. Silly stuff. The kind of thing you think children would do. But they loved that. They were looking for any respectability that the Klan provided. And the Klan also provided camaraderie between these people. For some of them, it was like belonging to a civic club, except their meetings were secret and involved pistols and knives and the Bible and the Confederate battle flag as props. It was very weird. And while we're talking about the poor, less educated people, the odd thing was that there were some allegedly respectable businessmen or public officials, some with college educations, who joined the Klan also. And I think that was largely driven out of racial hatred. Well, throughout the book, you write about how political figures essentially had to play to the Klan. They could not run afoul of the Klan for fear of losing their elected position. Yeah, in those days, there were plenty of counties in Mississippi where the Klan controlled a very extensive voting bloc that could sway the outcome of elections. So sure, these political people would pander to the Klan. There were plenty of instances. You mentioned at the outset these people who might have been indicted or brought to trial for some of the crimes and were never convicted, either hung juries or outright acquittals. Quite often, the public official in charge of drawing up the jury list, they were members of the Klan themselves. So they made sure that there were fellow Klansmen on the jury who would provide. All it needs is one person to hang a jury. Well, that was part of the goal. They always tried to put one Klansperson on the jury, one Klansman. They were men on the jury, and the Klanspeople would never be convicted. Yeah, that actually happened repeatedly in Mississippi in the 60s, including the trials against not only Sam Bowers. He was brought to trial 4 or 5 times before he was finally convicted, 32 years after the murder. But also another dreadful character named Dilla Beckwith, who assassinated Medgar Evers in Mississippi in 1963. So there were plenty of instances where there were hung juries, and these were 2 of the most significant civil rights trials held in Mississippi in the 60s. And during the 60s, they all wound up with hung juries. I think it was even more than 30 years after the murder of Medgar Evers it took before Beckwith was convicted. I think that was in 1994. So throughout your book, there are repeated examples of collusion between law enforcement, elected officials, and the Klan. The three civil rights workers, James Chaney, who was black, Michael Schwerner, and Andrew Goodman, both of whom were Jewish, and that's an element in the book, who were murdered in June 1964 in Philadelphia, Mississippi, had been turned over to the Klan by local law enforcement officials after they were stopped for a bogus traffic violation. Can you speak about these interlocking systems of white supremacy and how they work? Well, it just existed in Mississippi at that time. It was more acceptable in Mississippi in the 60s. Happily, much of that has changed. We still have racism in Mississippi. We still have attempts at suppressing voter registration and the exercising of the vote by blacks in Mississippi. But the climate that we had in the 60s and the time in which the book covers, it was widespread throughout the state, and it seeped into law enforcement. It operated at the highest levels. Quite often, the governor, lieutenant governor, legislator, they were all sympathetic with the Ku Klux Klan. When those three young men disappeared in Neshoba County in '64, our U.S. senators saw this as a hoax, that those boys have gone down to Cuba and they're probably enjoying a drink with Fidel Castro, and it was all a communist plot, when in fact they'd been executed and buried in a forlorn part of Neshoba County. And it was only after the FBI had paid off some people who knew about it that their bodies were discovered. And I think that particular incident, along with, say, the Dahmer murder, where they attacked his home, in which they had 3 children living there and a wife, and burned the thing to the ground and succeeded in killing him. He stayed in the house in a gunfight with the attackers while the family escaped through back windows. The kind of people who would do that, they're depraved. But at the time, these crimes were brushed off by the authorities. It was the kind of thing that worked during the battle to redeem ourselves. That's another great word that you've mentioned. All of this goes under the guise of being redeemers, to recover control of the South after Reconstruction. So it's a great deal of resentment. That resentment in part grows out of Reconstruction. So it's a long history down here, and I wouldn't be living in Mississippi today if it were as bad as prevalent as it was back then. But sadly, aside from the black communities of the South and a handful of whites, it's generally accepted as a fact of life. So there are 2 heroes in the book. There's Tom Landrum, who, at a tremendous personal risk to himself and his family, worked without pay for the FBI as an informant, and the courageous civil rights leader Vernon Dahmer. I wondered if you could speak about these 2 men. Sure. Vernon Dahmer was just first class. He wrote, he was a black man who had dared to be a leader in his region in South Mississippi on voter registration. He was the president of the NAACP chapter in Hattiesburg, which is, by Mississippi standards, a fairly substantial city. And he took great risks. He was threatened for several years before they finally struck with their fatal raid in January in 1966. So he knew that he was in risk with what he was doing. I know I interviewed his widow before the final trial of Bowers, and she talked about how they alternated sleeping at night, and always with guns by their bedside. And he might sleep for the first 4 or 5 hours of night, and then she would take over and sleep. And so that's the fear that they had, and yet they were not intimidated. He was a terribly brave man and a good man and a true hero in the movement. Tom Landrum was a white man from the same region who was a youth court counselor, and happily, there were white people who were troubled about what was going on, but so often they didn't know where to turn to try to do good and to combat the Klan. So Landrum worked with the FBI as a youth court counselor. They would check out potential bad boys and that sort of thing, and the local FBI agent realized that Tom Landrum was troubled, and so they approached him and said, "Would you be willing to join the Klan and report regularly to us?" And so Tom Landrum went home. Tom Landrum also had a big family. He had a wife, 5 children at home, and he talked to his wife, talked to his mother-in-law. They actually went on a retreat and prayed over whether he should take up this challenge from the FBI, and they all decided it was something he had a duty to do, in part, as a good Christian, and Tom Landrum then did it without pay. There were a lot of informers during that period that the FBI paid. Tom Landrum got mileage, and I don't even think the FBI reimbursed him for the Klan uniform he had to buy. And he did it at a great risk to himself. There was one incident near Natchez during that time that Landrum was in the Klan and informing where a Klansman who was thought to be an informant, was murdered by the White Knights. So Landrum, also like Vernon Dahmer, these were two people who risked their lives with small children within their family to try to do good. So I think you're right in characterizing both of them as heroes. So I get about halfway through your book, and I think this is a good story about the FBI, and this is, of course, during COINTELPRO and everything else. And then you get to this moment where the FBI brings in this soldier from the Colombo crime family, Gregory Scarpa. He's from New York, to intimidate and beat kidnapped Klan members to force them to talk. So I just want you to talk about those tactics, which are familiar to those of us who follow the FBI, especially if you look at the history of the left or the Black Power movement. Well, of course, one thing I don't want to do is totally aggrandize the FBI. They were helpful in Mississippi in the 60s, no thanks to J. Edgar Hoover, their director, who basically disliked the whole idea of the civil rights movement and despised Martin Luther King, and did everything he could to undermine Dr. King's efforts. And they were involved in a number of extra illegal activities in Mississippi and elsewhere, as we both know. And I'm sure you have, and I have, back when the COINTELPRO documents were all revealed, I think sometime in the 70s. It was quite amazing and frightening, some of the things the FBI was involved in. In my book, there are basically two instances. One is for them to import this hitman from the mafia in New York, who is already working with the FBI. He's trying to beat a rap he got in New York, and so they induce him to do dirty things for them. And there was one of the FBI people who had been sent to Mississippi who knew of Scarpa, and sent a request to the FBI in New York. Can you send us? That part's redacted from the FBI document I have, but clearly it's George Scarpa, or Gregory Scarpa. He fits the profile. And they send him to Mississippi, along with his girlfriend. The FBI pays his airfare, his room, and he shows up at the business of a guy who's a ranking Klan member, and they kidnap him, basically, and drag him out of the county and beat the hell out of him and send him to the hospital. So intimidated him that he began turning over all sorts of information to the FBI. The second instance in my book is during a period when the White Knights returned from blacks to begin attacking Jews in Mississippi, and they began bombing synagogues and the homes of prominent Jewish businessmen, as well as rabbis. And so when Jewish leaders met with the FBI, they said, "What can we do?" The FBI told them, "Give us money for this slush fund that we'll use for essentially illegal activity." And this particular slush fund that I wrote about was used in Meridian, Mississippi, to set up an ambush of a couple of Klansmen. It turns out one of the Klansmen was a young woman who was about to deliver a bomb to the home of a Jewish businessman. Did they attempt to arrest them? No. They unloaded on them with the SWAT team. And I think even some members of the military, local law enforcement, the FBI, and blew the hell out of this car and killed the young woman. It was an evil thing they were involved in, but it's highly extraordinary. No warning, no nothing. They stepped out of the car and dozens of people unloaded on them. I just want to close, Curtis, the last couple of minutes, because one of the things that I found fascinating with your book is because of that inside account within the Klan. We really got a view into how these people think and why they think the way they do. And I want to draw it to this particular moment, because we see a resurgence of this rabid nationalism and white supremacy and these cult-like figures around Trump, and of course in the attacks on the Capitol on January 6th. And I just want to draw parallels between what you wrote about and where we are today. Well, you see it in not necessarily the Ku Klux Klan anymore, but in these new groups that pop up. Whether it's Proud Boys, all these weird names they have for groups. It's generally not the work of one individual out as a single-minded assassin, but rather people who meet and get together and share their grievances and resentments and lash out. We certainly saw it on January 6th, but you've seen in a number of other places, not just the South today, but all around the country. It's the same sort of thing. It doesn't go by the Ku Klux Klan anymore, but they might as well. And would you argue that it's driven by the same economic despair? Sure, that's part of it, but that's not the only motivation. But yeah, it's certainly a major thing. Some of it's just downright hatred. Some of these people don't have money. They just don't like blacks, and they don't like liberals or communists, and they fear that if not communism, something's going to take over America. It's crazy stuff. and it's helped along by right-wing radio talk shows and, sadly, some television networks that play into this whole thing. Great. That was Curtis Wilkie on When Evil Lived in Laurel, the White Knights and the Murder of Vernon Dahmer. I thought that was going to be an article and it ended up being an interview, but, well, whatever. I'm glad that I read it anyway. Nutmilk, good to see you, bud. What's up, Commie? Just saw your video on Tiff Macklem. You were spot on. Yeah, of course I was spot on, bud. I'm a fucking professional. I fucking know exactly what the fuck I'm fucking talking about. Ah, man. Isn't Tiff Macklem just the perfect name right now? Isn't it just the perfect name for someone to have? Like, someone in that position. Like, I love that we're about to elect Prime Minister Pierre Poilievre. Like, he's Prime Minister Pee-Pee. It's perfect. We're about to elect Prime Minister Pee-Pee. PM Pee-Pee. Right? It's absolutely spot on. You can't do better. We can't do better as a people. Yep, Tiff and Muffy probably dine at a club on Friday evenings. Exactly. Right? That's exactly what it is. I think about these far-right groups and this situation here with Clara Sorrenti. That how integrated the Ku Klux Klan was into law enforcement, and how integrated that such a terrorist organization could become. And I think about that in reference to this Clara Sorrenti situation. How here is a person, a communist, who's attempting to play by the rules and is now being harassed by cops and far-right groups. And it reminds me very much of the Ku Klux Klan and of and how it managed to get itself integrated into the legal structure of our system. So I have a great concern and a grave concern that this is what is happening in our society, and that we are going to see the rise of, and we are seeing the rise, like the Proud Boys, the Oath Keepers. Like, we are seeing the rise of these groups. They are coming, and we're seeing that it has real, legitimate consequences. Hope you guys are all doing well out there. Sometimes I worry when I read a big long one like that, I lose people. But oh well, the chat gets quiet. It's okay to be introspective. I hope you're all doing well out there in the world. Each and every one of you. Patriot Front's another good one. Yeah, Ligandese. I know that you're fairly active in the Discord talking about these kinds of things, mate. And I'm happy that you're there. I'm happy that you're constantly pushing that button, because it's right to do. It's right to do. White supremacy is a curse, and the entire ethos of the American empire is one of white supremacy. And we pretend like it isn't a white supremacist, like Manifest Destiny and all this shit isn't white supremacist, but it is. It completely is. And you get to thinking, like, why are we acting the way that we're acting on the world stage? Like, why are we acting this way? And the only thing that I can come up with, is that we think that we're the best because we're white. And that's all it really comes down to. Like, that we can't tolerate another culture, another society that has its own ideas about how to exist in the world. We refuse, because they're not white. Yet the end of the article acted like it was crazy that America could be taken over by new ideas, good or bad. I think it could happen easier than he thinks. I mean, these aren't new ideas, right? These are old ideas. Old ideas. Like, seeing the rise of Donald Trump and these Republicans, like they're not even pretending, really. Like that's the part of it that is the most disturbing, right? That you've heard my commentary on how I view the political system as fairly narcissistic, mainly vanity projects. But the Republicans are not being very secretive. They're not being very quiet about their white supremacist views. And it's very easy to believe that the Republicans are going to come in and they're going to begin enacting fairly sweeping legislation that's going to regress the society, right? But all of the cultural gains that occurred since the 50s and the 60s, thanks to the civil rights movement and the labor movement, are going to be regressed. And like the United States is collapsing in serious ways. Like, how do they intend to maintain their war machine? How do they intend to maintain their foreign adventurism when they don't have a tax base, right? When they don't actually have anybody generating any wealth anymore? How do they actually intend to pay for all of these? It really does come down to, like, how are you going to pay for that, right? Like, how are you going to pay for that? How are you going to pay for all these cops? How are you going to pay for all these military? How are you going to pay for all these weapons? How are you going to do any of that? You don't make anything. You don't create anything. You don't design anything. You don't pay people wages. There's no economic activity. Like, when it comes down to it, you're just going to have big piles of wealth underneath the billionaire class that refuses to pay taxes. Like, how do you actually intend to support any of this? And so the United States is going to go through this crazy period of absolute regression. And organizations like the Ku Klux Klan are going to reemerge. And people like David Duke and these sorts of figures are going to take center stage. And I think the thing that people are not prepared for, the thing that people are really not prepared for, and something that I talk about often on the channel, so often that I fear that I sound like a broken record and that there are people rolling their eyes on the other side of this thing. But I'm going to keep talking about it, because we need to be prepared for the cultural shift. And there is a cultural shift that is coming in big and serious ways, where white supremacy, Nazism, fascism at least, are going to be presented to us as good. And the capitalist media is not going to look at this rising power coming from the South and go, we can't make money by exploiting their beliefs. They absolutely will make money exploiting their beliefs. They absolutely will produce Christian fascist propaganda. Absolutely they will. If it means that people go to the theater and give them money, they will absolutely do it. And people are not prepared for this. Like, they are not emotionally and spiritually prepared for how horrific it is going to be. That Christ himself will be presented to us as a fascist. And the grotesquerie of it, the horrificness of it. And he will be presented to us not as a, buffoonish, cartoonish sort of figure that exists in something like South Park, right? That he will be presented to us as our Lord and Savior, our Master, our ruler, and he will be a fascist. It's coming. And it's going to be like Marvel movie level. It's going to be beautiful to watch. It'll be spectacular. And millions of Americans will watch it and love it. It will be mainstream. And I suggest that we get prepared. Prepare yourselves emotionally. People who you never thought would be will become fascists. They will. There's a great play written by a fellow in Europe called Ionesco, called The Rhinoceros. And it's a play about, it's an absurdist play about a man who lives in a society where everybody around him steadily becomes rhinoceroses. And him dealing with the emotional trauma and the shock of people he knew and loved and respected suddenly being rhinoceroses. And of course, the analogy is very tight. The rhinoceroses are fascists. And you are suddenly going to be living in a reality where friends and family, co-workers, are going to be talking about that new movie that just came out that is overt Christian fascist propaganda, and how great it is, and how wonderful it is, and maybe we should think that way, right? Get ready for it. Isaac says, the U.S. is angry at Mexico because Mexico is not buying gasoline from oil. Mexico used to Texas, and now their gas is cheaper. Yeah, Mexico's made it fairly clear, like, they don't love the United States. Like, if the United States actually, like, this is what's so fucked up about about the relationship between the United States and Mexico. Like, honestly, this is what's so fucked up about the U.S.-Mexican border generally. Like, they're literally building a wall on the U.S.-Mexican border and basically just saying fuck you to Mexico. And what's so crazy about this whole situation is that the United States needs immigrants. Like, it needs immigrants. It needs them. The United States is going into a population decline because it costs like $300,000 to raise kids now. They need immigrants. They need them very, very, very badly. And what are they doing? They're like locking them up in detention centers and shit. They're creating a wall. They're doing everything they can to keep the dirty immigrants out. It's like, you need them, though. Like, you need them. It's so stupid. It's just white supremacy. That's all it is. And so anytime the United States and Mexico get into a little tiff, I'm immediately like, yeah, go Mexico. Fuck the States. Like, unbelievable. Unbelievable. Like, this is what's coming for us, man. Mexico used to send their oil to Texas and buy gasoline, but now they're refining the oil in Mexico. Yeah. Detach from the United States. Just detach from it. Like, don't even trade with them. Like, stop, just stop. These people are crazed. They're completely destabilized and unstable. There's no reason. I think this is actually true of Canada, and it's actually something that's gained a lot of steam, especially on the conservative right. Is this idea of why aren't we refining our own oil? Like, why are we sending it down to the States and all this kind of stuff? And if Canada starts doing that, that's going to be a major, major problem for the United States. Like, they rely on that. And you're seeing, like, an upswell of nationalism. Certainly fascism, but also an upswell of just straight up the idea that we should take care of ourselves. Right? And nationalism is a very, very, very powerful force. And if the Albertans actually just decide to set up refineries and refine the oil themselves, like, the U.S. is going to eat it. I mean, larger than it actually is. And this is what's coming for the United States. Any country that is looking at the U.S. being like, oh, we rely on the U.S. for this. Any country would be wise to think to themselves, we got to find a new source. We can't keep relying on the United States for X or Y or Z, because you can't rely on them. Right? You can't rely on them. Ligandi says, before I was a tanky, once asked one of my Chud gamer friends jokingly about why white people are allowing East Asians and Indians to run laps on you by taking all your good educations and jobs here. And he said, we're on standby mode. We're waiting for the Fourth Reich. What's so stupid about that? Right? Like, it's, first of all, it's terrifying. But what's so stupid about it is that the Nazis lost. They failed. Like, they failed in every regard. They were a failed political movement. It didn't work. It was a complete dunk. And the only way that Europe and Germany and the rest of them were able to move forward was with socialist policies, debt forgiveness, this sort of thing, right? And so when guys say like this sort of stuff, they're just admitting that they're enormous losers, right? It's when people people float into the chat every so often and they start talking about how they support Nazism and Nazi ideas, and it's just like, so what a total loser. What an enormous loser. Like, literally, imagine going through history and venerating the biggest losers you can find. Never won a war, never won a conflict, got defeated handily by communists, right? Like, only this culture could do this kind of shit. Pick the biggest loser you can find and double down on it. Just absolutely embarrassing. No wonder the United States is collapsing in on itself with this kind of garbage shit coming out. Like, every country on the planet, and I mean, you're looking at China. If I'm like Saudi Arabia, or if I'm any of these countries, Africa, South America, even Australia, I'm looking at the United States and I'm looking at China and I'm going, yeah, I know which way I'm pivoting. I know which way I'm going. Which one of these two looks stable? Which one of these two looks like they're crazed lunatics? Yeah, Hitler used to consider the U.S. racists. Yeah, like the Nazis used the genocide of the First Nations people and the enslavement of the black population as a basis for their doctrine of what they planned to do with the Jews, right? And even the Nazis thought that the Americans went too far. This is kind of going all the way back to our commentary about like the U.S. will show their hand. I'm just kind of like, what? Like, the U.S. has shown its hand. It's got 25% of the world's prison population, primarily black. Like, like, when are we actually just going to admit it? Like, when is, what is it going to take? Like, what is it going to take for us to finally say the United States is a Nazi-style regime? It always has been. That the only way the populace has made any gains is by fighting in the streets for it. Like, literally fighting in the streets for it. And what is it going to take? When's the moment? Is it going to be like, literally we have to elect a president who is walking around like with a swastika on his forehead? Like, is that what it's going to have to take? Because it seems like that's what it's going to have to take. Like, they're outright saying they're going after the labor movement. House Republicans are planning to launch a barrage of attacks on government institutions that administer to and support labor unions if the party takes control of the House this fall. Politico reports the Republicans in the House Education and Labor Committee have compiled a short list of labor officials to target if they control the House in the midterm elections. Republicans are looking to go after labor regulators in the Biden administration, like Labor Secretary Marty Walsh and the National Labor Relations Board, General Counsel Jennifer Abruzzo, as well as the NLRB itself and the White House's pro-worker task force. Targeting these figures and curbing pro-union policies that the administration has put in place will be one of their first orders of business, Politico reports. I've joked with my colleagues that we will probably be holding 2 oversight hearings a day because we're going to be so busy with oversight. We're going to hold the Department of Labor accountable. Like, destroy labor unions. Go after labor, right? Enact the class war. And what's so sad about this is it's not like the Democrats are like super duper pro-union. Like, it's not like they're super duper like virulently defending unions. Like, we're in the waning minutes, so let's go through. France is invading Yemen to steal its resources. So while the United States is maintaining a genocide in the area, France is invading it. There won't be any sanctions or consequences, right? France's Foreign Legion arrives in Yemen to secure gas facilities. France reportedly aims to export gas from the facility in Shabwa in order to reduce Europe's reliance on Russian fuel. Isn't that great? Isn't that just fucking amazing? Oh yeah, this one. This one, dude. Canada to create team to counter Russian disinformation. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau unveiled plans to create a special team focused on countering Russian disinformation and propaganda on Tuesday, as Ukrainians prepare to mark the 6-month anniversary of Moscow's invasion of their country. The Prime Minister announced a new initiative as part of a package of new Canadian measures designed to support Ukraine and punish Russia for launching a war that has killed tens of thousands and whose impacts are being felt around the world. Canada is also imposing sanctions against 62 more people, including those the government described as several Russian regional governors and their families, as well as a Russian company whose products include anti-drone equipment. Ottawa is also planning to spend nearly $4 million on 2 projects to bolster Ukraine's military and police services, including training to help Ukrainian police officers better handle cases involving sexual trauma, as well as mental health programs. Here's CTV trying to put a positive spin on what amounts to a thought control program. Right? Is what I'm doing Russian propaganda? We'll see. Trudeau revealed the package during a special meeting of leaders in countries that have been supporting Ukraine since Russian forces first crossed into the country. Notionally intended to discuss Russia's illegal annexation of Ukraine's Crimean Peninsula, the meeting also came as Ukrainians prepared to mark blah, blah, blah. See, like, absolutely no commentary on how, like, so how is this anything but, like, a Ministry of Truth sort of situation? I want to repeat yet again that there's no sanctions on food. When the Russian regime blames sanctions for the food crisis around the world, they're engaging in disinformation. We need to continue fighting Russian disinformation. That's why Canada will create a dedicated team to help increase our capacity to monitor and detect Russian and other state-sponsored disinformation. So, like, when do I have my door kicked in, do you think? Like, when does this happen to me, do you think? When are they going to kick in my door like they kicked in Clara Sorrenti's door? Right? And use this kind of thing as a justification for doing so. Right? Because that's what this is. Like, that's what this is. They're doing this so that they can do to regular citizens what they did to Edward Snowden, what they did to the other guy. You know who I'm talking about. Like, they're just codifying it. They're just putting it in place so that it's normal. That if you dare look at what the Russian news sources are saying, I've got an RT source here. Here you go. Right? From Glenn Dyson, how Russophobia, or Russophrenia, from supposedly smart people in the West has slowly led us towards a major European war. So if I read and report on this, is this Russian propaganda? Am I going to have my door kicked in? Right? Am I going to have my door kicked in? For reporting on supposed Russian propaganda? Is that going to happen? I don't know. Seems normal, right? Normal society, right? This is a great article, though. I'm going to hang on to this article. I'm going to do this article tomorrow. You can stay put, too. You can go away. You can go away. Yeah, top Canadian mining companies profited $143 billion in 2021. So much for the idea of inflation, if you ask me. Like, the whole concept of inflation is like everybody should be feeling the pinch, right? But they're making money hand over fist, right? So where's the inflation actually going? Well, it's going into their pockets. So it's just a price rage. It's just a price gouge. It's all it is. It's all it's ever been. And to call it anything else is dumb. Like, this is very strictly a wealth transfer. And for some reason, we're not in the streets about it. I can't even understand it. In August 2022, the Canadian Mining Journal, a reliably pro-corporate industry magazine, published its list of Canada's top 40 mining companies, based on 2021 revenues. To merit inclusion on the list, they need to meet two of the following three criteria: be domiciled in Canada, trade on a Canadian stock exchange, and have significant share of an operating mine or advanced development in Canada. The vast majority of the top 40 companies are headquarters in Canada. 36 out of 40. Like, they're just rubbing our dicks in it, eh? Like, they just openly report it. Canada Mining Journal. We made a ton of money. Everybody get fucked. So much for inflation, right? Yeah, in short, the Canadian mining industry does not need a rebrand. It needs a reality check. It needs regulation. It needs to be held accountable for its abuses and for the substantial role it's played in the appropriation of value from the global south, which will certainly not happen under the Canadian government as it presently exists. No, a delegitimized system that exclusively works on behalf of these psychopaths is certainly not going to regulate it. Yeah, it's crazy how bought in everyone still is. That's exactly it. Yeah, we're not in the streets because we believe the free market propaganda. Yeah. I think people are so brainwashed that there'll never be a breaking point for most of them. I mean, there will be. Don't forget, guys, I say this over and over again. No one and nothing will be more convincing than capitalism itself. That sure, there's going to be a small minority of people who are going to live in their intergenerational homes and who are going to live with intergenerational wealth and all of that. But, like, the system of capital is going to abandon everyone. It just will. That's how the structure of the piece works. And the ruling class is so psychotic and detached from reality that they'll gleefully do it. And so the people who are on the precipice right now, who are on the fence right now, will just be outright betrayed and just be cast out into the streets. And we're going to see that happen. And it's going to happen again and 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 again. Right? That the system of capital can't help itself. It can't help itself. It must operate this way. And so the people who are sitting there right now, kind of chewing their fingers, crossing their fingers, hoping it's going to get better, well, give it a year, give it a 2 year, give it 3 year, give it 4 year, 5 year, 6 year, year over year over year, as it gets worse and worse and worse and worse. Let some of these people go hungry for a bit. Let people wonder if they're going to be able to afford food next month. Like, nothing's going to convince people more than the system of capital itself. The IRS hiring thousands of auditors with the power to arrest poor waitresses who earn $7.25 an hour. Yep, didn't report her tips. Yeah, exactly. Don't go after, like, the billionaire class that don't pay taxes, right? Yep, wasn't one of the Ferengi rules of acquisition. Never try to end abuse because someday you might get to be an abuser. Yeah, that sounds right. That sounds right. Dude, I love the Ferengi rules of acquisition. I should actually have this because it is the Ferengi rules of acquisition. It's 100% like a total spoof of capitalism, right? It's a complete spoof of capitalism. Rule number 1: once you have their money, you never give it back. Number 2: the best deal is the one that brings the most profit. 3: never spend more for an acquisition than you have to. 4: time and latinum are precious. 5: always exaggerate your estimate. I love these. Never allow family to stand in the way of opportunity. Keep your ears open. Small print leads to large risk. Opportunity plus instinct equals profit. Rule 10: greed is eternal. Rule 11: even if it's free, you can always buy it cheaper. Rule 12: anything worth selling is worth selling twice. Number 13: anything worth doing is worth doing for money. Keep your family close, keep your latinum closer. Number 15: dead men close no deals. Dude, yeah, these are great. Quark was a great character. Yeah, and you're right about this. Like, this is something... What's actually really funny about the Ferengi rules of acquisition is that as it goes on, because there's a lot of them, right? How many of these are there? There's like 200 and something? Oh, 300, I think. Oh, no. 218, or 285, rather. And some of them are actually quite wise, right? You can't buy fate. Right? Like, that's pretty wise. Right? Some of them are, like, when the rules of acquisition start, they start kind of as, like, a spoof of capitalism, and they have, like, greed is eternal, right? Like, and they're all just, like, that kind of thing. Yet Rom led the unionization of Quark's Bar. Adam, thank you. Absolutely, unionization forever. Well, and don't forget that about the Ferengi Reformation, how the leader of the Ferengi High Council or whatever actually led like a reformationist movement to try to get the Ferengi to stop focusing so much on just money and to start caring about something else. Latinum can't buy happiness, but you can sure have a blast renting it. There's nothing more dangerous than an honest businessman. Always ask, what's in it for me? Never make fun of a Ferengi's mother. Right? I love this. Rule number 34. War is good for business. Rule number 35. Peace is good for business. Rule number 36. Neutrality is good for business. I'm so glad I found this, dude. I'm so glad somebody brought this up, dude. Yeah. The rules of acquisition are absolutely hilarious. Oh yeah, now we're in just like the old kind of stuff, and we're near. What's rule number 34? Nah. Expand or die. All right. Well, here we are, guys. We're nearing the end. I hope each and every one of you is doing really well out there. I really do. Times are tough, and they're going to get tougher. And there's no reason to bullshit ourselves about any of that. If you have found yourself in a position of momentary stability, I think it will pay. It will be wise for you to pause for a minute and to think more gratefully. You know what, man? I'm going to unabashedly do this. I don't give a fuck. You guys can roll your eyes about it all you want. No. Open image. Come on. Get the fuck out of here. I don't care what you do. Ugh, it's a shitty image. Of course, Amazon providing the shittiest possible image it can find. Open image. That's what I want. I gotta find a good one of these. Gotta find a really good one of these. If you guys are in a moment of stability, if you are paying your rent, okay? If you're paying your rent, if your food is taken care of, if you're sitting there and you're covering your bills, I want you to think more highly of yourself. It's easy for us to get down on ourselves. I know I do. I'm sure you do. It's easy for us to get down on ourselves. To think that we don't have value. To think that we're not important. To forget what we are and who we are and how we are in the world. And to believe that we have no purpose or meaning, or we have no capability or value, if you prefer to use that capitalist language. But if you're paying your rent and you're paying your bills, then you're making it happen in this failed system. And you should celebrate that. Give yourself a break. Give yourself a break. The world is hard enough. You don't need to be hard on yourself. Ask yourself, right now, in this moment, are you safe? Are you secure? Are you stable? And if the answer to that is yes, then ask yourself, are you enjoying yourself? Are you having a good time? Are you even trying to have a good time? Because you should. Because you should. I know that we're talking about dire things here, and talking about the meta. And the reason why I bring up the chakras is that it's a good way for us to find our feet and ground ourselves and to remind ourselves that your life matters. You matter. It took billions of years of random generation and iteration to create you. How dare you cast that aside and pretend like it's unimportant? You deserve to enjoy your life. You deserve happiness in your life. You deserve stability. You deserve to feel good and to feel powerful in your own body and your own self. You deserve love. You deserve to sing. And you deserve to live in a free world. That's what we're struggling for here in the end of it all. To live in a world where we're supporting one another, where the simple act of participating in the society is to participate in the freedom of every person within it. That's ultimately what we're striving for here, and why we struggle so hard. Because we know that when we interact with the world around us, it could be so much better. And it can. And we can do it. Never forget Each and every one of you is a quantum being, living in quantum energy. The billionaires are spending hundreds of billions of dollars and time and effort to try to convince you that you're just a commodity. Rebel. Revolt. Repent. Good luck. We're going to need it.